in our courts, and I think TV licences are possibly a category of cases that would suit a regulatory regime far more than a criminal regime.
Alison Saunders' comments come after a committee of MPs voted to allow ministers to consider alternative penalties for non-payment of the fee. The BBC says the change could cause big financial problems for the corporation. Public Health England is urging councils to add fluoride to water after a study looking at the impact in areas where it's been introduced. In fluoridated areas, 45% fewer children aged 1 to 4 were admitted to hospital for dental problems. British summers are likely to get hotter and drier, according to the Met Office. Experts also say they expect winters to get wetter but milder. And we're getting some breaking business news, Dom.
Yes, Adrian, in the last few minutes it's been announced that the government's going to sell off another big chunk of Lloyds banking group, £4.2 billion worth. It's going to be sold not to the likes of you and me, but to institutional investors, so big fund managers and banks and the like. It would bring the government stake down to 25%. So the gradual process of the privatisation, the reprivatisation back of Lloyds banking group is still underway.
Thanks, Dom. Let's get the sport now, Mike.
Ahead of tonight's Manchester derby at Old Trafford, Sir Bobby Charlton says he's absolutely certain Manchester United were right to appoint David Moyes as manager. Charlton concedes the Premier League champions have played really, really badly this season, but insists United have the right man for the future. Well, Manchester City can move above Liverpool into second with a victory this evening. A reminder, there's full commentary of the Manchester derby in 5 Live Sport from 7 o'clock. If you want commentary of Arsenal against Swansea, that's on 5 Live Sports Extra. The defending champions, the West Indies, have comprehensively beaten Bangladesh by 73 runs in their Super 10 World 2020 match in Dhaka. They set the hosts 172, but Bangladesh were all out for 98. Earlier, Ireland's women lost their opening game of the World 2020 against New Zealand by 42 runs. Dan Evans is back in the Great Britain Davis Cup team for next week's quarter-final against Italy. And after finishing 19th in the women's downhill at the Sochi Winter Olympics last month, the 4-time Olympic alpine skier Shemi Olcott has announced her retirement from racing.
5 Live Sport. Listen digitally or using the BBC Sport app. For more info, click bbc.co.uk/sport.
Where you'll also find our terms of use.
And the weather. Rain will clear off to the west tonight, following by clearing skies, patchy fog and frost tomorrow. Any bits of rain remaining will clear, and that will leave some sunshine for quite a lot of people. Highs between 8 and 11 Celsius. Here's Amy.
Thanks, Victoria. The M60 clockwise continues to queue because of that earlier accident from 15 at Swinton all the way through to 18 at Simston, although all lanes are open. M25 anti-clockwise is heavy because of an earlier broken down vehicle. 25 Enfield through to 24 for Potters Bar. And also anti-clockwise, we've got queues. There's an accident affecting you between 22 at St Albans and 21A.
BBC Radio 5 Live is also available through your digital TV.
Sky, Freeview, Freesat, YouView and Virgin Media
are just some of the ways you can listen.
6 minutes past 5. Good afternoon. Welcome to Drive with Adrian Chiles and Victoria Derbyshire. We're with you today as part of 5 Live's 20th anniversary celebrations. Our main story this evening, the head of Malaysia Airlines has been defending the way his company has been supporting the families of those who were on board flight MH370. Many relatives are becoming increasingly frustrated and angry. And earlier, it led to a rare demonstration of public protest outside the Malaysian embassy in Beijing. Families clashed with police, accusing them of hiding the truth. But Malaysia Airlines insists it's doing all it can and as fast as it can to keep relatives informed of their progress and every aspect of the investigation.
The search area has now been significantly narrowed. 26 countries are involved in the operation, but bad weather's been hampering efforts to get any closer to possible debris. Mark Binskin, Vice Chief of the Australian Defence Force, says it could take weeks, if not months, to find any parts of the plane.
We're not searching for a needle in a haystack. We're still trying to define where the haystack is. So that's just to put it in context. For safety concerns today, we had to pull the assets off the search and put Success to the south. But we're hoping for good weather in the coming days, more aircraft, more ships in the area, and we'll start to be able to refine the search.
Let's talk to Werner Overdijk, who is the managing director of an organisation called Crisis Plan in Holland. Why don't you tell us what your company does, first of all, Mr. Overdijk?
Well, we provide training, we provide education on crisis management, we provide interactive videos, and we provide advice during before, during and after a crisis to private companies and governments.
Right, okay. So if you were advising the Malaysian government right now, who are being blamed by some of the relatives, what would you be saying to them?
Well, definitely I would point out that there's a role conflict, that they have a potential role conflict. On one hand, they are the airliner, the transporter of passengers. After the crash, they have become a care provider or information provider, since there's little and scarce and a lot of contradictory information. And on the third role conflict, they might be, but this is just when the cause is being pinpointed, they might be a suspect in their own case.
So what would you be advising then?
Well, I would be advising the following. They should, first, I have about 5 advices. They should centralize all information to relatives and family. They should initiate a 24/7 help desk and a care desk that provides financial support, provides information, helps them to provide instant care to those in need, to relatives and family members. They should be prepared that this might take at least 5 years. So the aftermath and the aftercare could at least take 5 years. They should prevent conflicts, what is already being now here between them and the family members, but also, and that will be in the next period, between relief and care organizations. They should support probably a self-help organization of family and relatives of flight MH370 that will be erected. And
but all the tasks that you've just mentioned there, actually shouldn't all of it be outsourced in a way, because the relatives have lost complete faith in anything the Malaysian government says or does?
You're right, but relatives will do this to overcome their griefs and to share with each other the mental and problems that they're facing right now. So this will be a matter of weeks before the family members will organize themselves.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. That's Werner Overdijk from a company called Crisis Plan in Holland. Let's talk now to Dr. Stephen Wright, who is an aviation lecturer from the University of Leeds. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
What is your theory about what's happened to this plane?
This is a really unfortunate occurrence. The aircraft has, as we believe, has deviated from its standard track. Something very untoward has happened inside the flight deck. To be precise on what has happened exactly has yet to be established, because until the cockpit voice recorder and the digital flight data recorder have been recovered, speculation is really anybody's guess.
But it couldn't deviate off course for that length of time without a human being involved in that.
Absolutely. Something's happened in the flight deck. The aircraft would always be flown on the autopilot. That's pretty standard. So before the flight crew even take off, they've already loaded in all the waypoints. Basically a bit like setting our sat-nav to go from point A to point B. All of those routes are put into the computer. And then somebody has manually deviated the aircraft. They've reprogrammed this thing in flight. And then as a result, the aircraft has flown thousands of nautical miles away from its intended destination, almost in the opposite direction, and what appears to be towards, Antarctica.
So it's clearly a deliberate act, but obviously we don't know why.
No, absolutely. That we could speculate for quite some time.
Well, there is an aviation expert who has been talking to the BBC today, who has many years' experience, who says he thinks it is suicide by the pilot.
That is a possibility. That's one of many possibilities. But one of the major elements that the investigating team will be looking at is if it were a technical failure, why didn't this aircraft land immediately, which is the normal type of practice. The fact that it didn't does indicate very clearly that this was an untoward act of some form, and the outcome, as we know, is very unfortunate.
Well, there couldn't have been simply a fire on board?
No, this if there was a fire on board, then both flight crew members would have had oxygen. There is fire suppression capability fitted to various aircraft systems. The flight crew would always make an emergency landing very, very quickly if a fire were to occur. And the other thing to bear in mind is flight crew members, when they have a major problem like this, they don't keep it to themselves. They get on the radio, they identify who they are, where they're going.
Assuming that they can get on the radio, though.
Well, you say that they can get on the radio. Okay, so if the radio wasn't working, at the back of the centre pedestal, basically at the back of the box between where they're sitting, is a satellite phone.
Right.
We know that the satellite system was working.
Okay, so the fact that no one did, I mean, what does that lead you to believe?
It leads you to believe that a very untoward act has happened. Somebody has got into the flight deck and has steered this aircraft to the trajectory that we now believe is the ditching, the loss of this aircraft.
Thank you very much for talking to us. That's Dr. Stephen Wright, who is an aviation lecturer from the University of Leeds.
It's coming up to 5:15.
This is 5 Live Drive.
Here are the headlines. The chief executive of Malaysia Airlines has defended the way his company supported the families of those on board the missing airliner. President Obama says Russia faces further economic sanctions if it continues to encroach on Ukrainian sovereignty. And the government's going to sell off an additional 7.5% of the part-nationalised Lloyds banking group. Let's have the travel, Amy.
Thanks, Adrian. The M60 clockwise still queuing, unfortunately, taking about 35 minutes to get from junction 6 at Sale through to 18 at Simster. It's all because of an earlier accident which happened between 17 and 18. It was briefly closed, and now all lanes are open, but traffic's still struggling. M25 anti-clockwise, broken down tanker is blocking one lane at 29 at Romford, causing slow-moving traffic on the approach. And also anti-clockwise, it's slow because of an earlier accident from 22 through to 21A. M56 westbound, emergency repairs are taking place between Tatton and Lymm, that's 8 and 9. Lane 1 of the 3 is closed. That will slow down as you head out of Manchester. And Staffordshire's M6 southbound, a broken down lorry closes off one lane between 15 to Stoke and 14 at Stafford North. Amy Clues, 5 Live Travel.
For 20 years, BBC Radio 5 Live has brought listeners the biggest stories.
Welcome to a new network, Radio 5 Live. News and sport from the BBC.
Breaking news.
Hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets of South Africa to celebrate the new era.
And the best live sport.
Drogba to win it. And he's won it! Self-dear champions of Europe!
To mark the station's 20th birthday, 5 Live will chart its major milestones from 2 decades of broadcasting. In a special show, 5 Live at 20. A 1-hour special this Friday from 12 o'clock on BBC Radio 5 Live.
Football now. And Victoria, would you mind if I told you a little story about when I was a little boy?
I wouldn't mind at all.
When West Brom had a cop tie and my granddad took me up midweek, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and the ticket office was in the ground. So while he was in the ticket office, I stood in the deserted ground, and it felt absolutely magical. And there were just 2 players jogging round the touchline. And when they went past me, one of them was Peter Barnes and the other one was Derek Statham, and they both said morning to me.
Oh.
And I nearly died on the spot. I could barely breathe. And Peter Barnes is here. You made a young boy
Hooray!
very happy. It was probably the highlight of my childhood, Peter, in fact.
It seems like a long time ago, that one. I'm sure it was a long time ago.
So you also played for Man United and Manchester City, which is why you're here tonight. Where do your allegiances lie?
They obviously lie over the road at Man City, Adrian. I was a Blue as a kid. My father played for City back in the 50s and 60s. And my grandfather, Fred, who was a plumber, took me up he lived in Moss Side at the time, took me up Lloyd Street and to watch my first City game in 68. You know, the great team of Bell, Lee, Summerby, that era, that won the league championship in 68. So I suppose it had to be a Blue, really. I had 2 brothers who were United fans.
Granddads have got a lot to answer for, haven't they? They're generally responsible for our allegiances, in my view. So when you saw Man City sink into the 3rd tier, what were your feelings then?
Well, it was very sad. I mean, 25 years, you could say, of about 20 managers, numerous defeats, and as you say, dropping down different leagues all the time. It was a sad time, but the one thing that have always stuck there, the fans have always been very loyal and stuck by them over the years, which has been fantastic. And the good times have come back now, and it's took a long, long time for those times to happen.
So what do you feel about tonight's game then? What about United? They seem to take one step forward and take two steps back, don't they?
Yeah, it's been an indifferent season, Adrian. I think it's in a transitional period for the club with a new manager. I mean, how could anybody, succeed at Alex Ferguson and have success straight away? And it's a testing time for the club. I hope David Moyes gets it right. He's got a lot of experience at Everton, obviously, and coming to United is a big, big challenge for him. But I'm sure it's one he's relishing and looking forward to. And I think people need to give him time. But City, it's exciting being a City fan now and exciting being an ex-player. And I think the new manager, Pellegrini's done some great signings in the summer. And, it's exciting times being a City fan.
What was it like playing in the red when you were a Blue?
I enjoyed it because it was either Coventry City reserves, Adrian, or playing for Man United. And being a Mancunian...
But at least Coventry playing blue, though, Peter.
That's true. But no, my career was going nowhere fast in '84, and I think my old boss, Ron Atkinson, resurrected my career and bringing me back to Manchester. And it was a great turning point for me in my career. I didn't expect to get in the team straight away because they had a good side then with Jasper also on the wing and little Gordon Strachan. And but he was my old boss, and I was a massive George Best fan, as every kid was growing up in this city in the '60s. And, if you couldn't look at George Best and admire what he'd done on the field, certainly I did, being a little kid with little legs and playing on the wing from a school. And I think it was great being a George Best fan.
Looking at City, who's your favourite player there? Yaya Touré on his day is just unplayable, but he is one of those on his day players. He can sort of vanish, which is tricky for a bloke of his size, I would have thought.
Yeah, he looks ungainly at times, and sometimes he looks disinterested, but... I think he's a much better player when he gets forward with the ball and he supports the front two. I think when he sits on the halfway line and plays in front of the back four, you're not getting the best out of Yaya Touré. He needs to get forward and score goals. He's having a magnificent season score-wise, scoring goals. And even the other people around him, like David Silva, if he plays well, I think the team plays well. Nasri's found his confidence back with this new manager, has given him his belief and confidence back. And they're just a great team to watch on the day, and they score plenty of goals.
How would you fancy being a wing-back in this modern era? Have you got the lungs for it? They do it. There's an awful lot of up and down going on, isn't there?
I don't think I'd survive as a wing-back, but my game was never defending, coming back and tackling, as you know, from my West Brom days. But I certainly would love to play on the wing in this side. I think I'd be sick of the ball and get so much of the ball from the full-backs. And I think these days the full-backs have got to do more running than anybody else. But it's a great team to watch, and they score more goals than anybody else. And long may it continue.
What's the score going to be?
I think it'll be, if United play to the best and City are lacklustre like they can be sometimes, it'll be a draw. But I think
that's a bit damning, Peter. You can't say that.
I can't say it, but I am saying
we are in Salford as we speak.
I know,
for heaven's sake, be careful.
But I think if City play to the best and they're all going for it, I can see City getting away win 2 or 3-1.
Okay, Peter Barnes, lovely to see you here. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Dominic's back because there's more about the Lloyds banking group.
Yeah, and whether it might make the state a profit, I think, is the interesting question. Because when the government...
Remind us what the news is, first of all, sorry.
Yeah, the news is that the government has said that it's going to sell 7% of Lloyds banking group. It's the second time that they've sold a chunk of the government's stake. The first time round, they were accused of not quite breaking even on their bailout, on the price they paid for the bailout. This time round is interesting because the share price has gone up a bit since September when the last chunk was sold. So actually I think the government will probably be able to say, we don't know the price, but if it's anywhere near today's closing share price, they probably will make a profit on the £4.3 billion they're selling off. So that'll be interesting. It's interesting to see the effect it'll have on the public finances, because obviously the government wants to pay off the national debt as soon as possible, and that currently is a long way off. Here is what the Treasury spokesperson have said, got the quote through in the last few minutes. UK Financial Investments, which is the government investment body, advised the Chancellor it would be appropriate to sell another part of the government's shareholding in the Lloyds banking group. The principles that the government needs to adhere to are getting the best value for the taxpayer, maximising support for the economy, and restoring private ownership. So the headline is that within 90 days' time, which is how long the sale has to happen, the government will only own 25% of Lloyds banking group, with another chunk today being announced, being sold back into the private sector.
Thank you.
The former chairman of the Cooperative Bank, Paul Flowers, has given his first interview since resigning his position. The 63-year-old was filmed allegedly handing over £300 for cocaine and discussing buying other illegal drugs. The scandal prompted questions about his suitability for such a prominent role. The interview will be broadcast on Newsnight later on this evening. And to give Paul Flowers some credit, he hasn't chosen anyone who was going to give him an easy ride. Jeremy Paxman did the interview. Thanks very much for joining us. How would you describe him, the way he presented himself to you today?
Well, you know, he's a big bloke, he's grown a beard, he's been in therapy, he's still receiving weekly therapy. He is penitent, he is hurt, he's a bit bitter, but I think he thinks he's come out the other side. I mean, he went through one hell of a year. The incident you refer to where he was caught in a sting being filmed talking about drugs and apparently handing over money, having drug paraphernalia and the like. But that actually was after he had stopped being chairman. But I asked him what the last year had been like.
Interesting. I was the chair of the board of the bank until late May and officially resigned on June the 5th, which was actually my birthday, so it was a joy to sign off on the job on my birthday. Many of the things which have come into the public domain actually occurred after I had left office, and people assumed that they had occurred before, but they are quite wrong. They were after that. Things got pretty hairy around about the end of November. And up to then there hadn't been much commentary about the things that we were doing at the bank, but it got worse after that. And for me personally, there have been several months when it has been hellish. But during that process, I've actually been very well supported by a raft of very good friends. You certainly find out who your friends are, because a significant number of people in politics and in the co-op and some in the church have been noticeable by their silence or their absence. But a significant number of others have been around to offer support.
So what struck you most, Jeremy? Were you surprised about anything that came across?
Was I surprised? I mean, I've met a few people who've been through terrible events in their lives, and you know, it's very difficult often to disentangle their personal feelings from what they've done or what they're said to have done. In this case, he struck me as a man who was quite determined to sort his life out. He had checked himself in for a month in hospital just before Christmas, came out Christmas Eve. He is still, as I say, receiving therapy. He clearly feels that he did fail in the job, let's face it. I mean, the co-op is in a great deal of trouble, the co-op bank. And part of that is attributable to him. He also, of course, was in a pretty tough place where he's under sort of a lot of pressure, not just from the bank itself, but also from government. He told me about 2 or 3 occasions on which the government had tried to get him to invest in some duff enterprises to get them out of a hole. Particularly, of course, the most famous one is the attempt to get the co-op to buy 630-odd branches of Lloyds Bank. I asked him how much pressure he'd been under to take those branches on.
Considerable from the present government, mainly from Conservatives. They wanted a deal. Remember that the government still is the major shareholder of that bank because of the structural support that it had needed back in 28. Clearly they wanted a deal which would help them in terms of public finances. They actually said that they were keen on this co-op becoming a much more significant player with more scale. We would have had about 7 or 8% of the market if this had gone through. And there was pressure certainly from Mark Hoban, but I believe and know that that originated much higher up with the Chancellor himself.
What form did this pressure take?
Regular calls, regular checks to see whether or not we were progressing well, and I mean 2 or 3 times a week, calls from the junior minister. They wanted a deal, and they wanted us to do it. They might say no now, but I know that that was what they wanted, and that was the pressure they were applying.
The disgraced former chairman of the cooperative bank, Paul Flowers, talking to Jeremy Paxman, and you can see that interview in full on Newsnight tonight at 10:30 on BBC Two.
28 minutes past 5. There are calls for more to be done to tackle liver disease in the UK. Figures show that the number of deaths from the condition has gone up 40% in a decade in England, while in other European countries it's been decreasing. A report by a cross-party group of MPs says there will be catastrophic consequences if this continues to be ignored. Our medical correspondent is Fergus Walsh. What is liver disease and what does this report say about it?
Well, there are 3 main drivers behind liver disease: alcohol, which we would all expect and have heard of, obesity, they're the main 2, and then also viral hepatitis. And there's general agreement actually across the board that liver disease doesn't get the attention it deserves. It's the 5th biggest killer. And of all the big killers, it's the only one where mortality rates are rising here in the UK, where in fact they're falling in the rest of Europe. Now, I met a chap called Dave Norris, who's 58, 15 and a half stone, had type 2 diabetes, but he was devastated last year to be told that he needed a liver transplant.
I was overweight, I would never lie, but I was never sort of like what you consider massively overweight, you know what I mean? And you never thought, you know, and then suddenly be told that, you know, your liver is no longer functioning and it won't get any better. And the only thing we can do for you is try and get you on a transplant waiting list, you know. Was, complete shock.
Why are the figures for our country so bad, and what do MPs want?
Well, one of the reasons is the UK is one of the few countries where alcohol consumption has really soared in the last 50 years. Now, you combine that with the fact that we're the fattest nation in Europe, and that begins to explain it. Well, this whole party group, they want a minimum unit price for alcohol in England of 50 pence. And they want things like more blood tests, more ultrasound scans, things that can actually pick up liver disease years before it becomes untreatable. And also on the 3rd tier, they want hepatitis B vaccination, common in other countries, but not here, universal, and a strategy to eradicate hepatitis C, where there are drugs now that can effectively cure it.
Thank you. Let's talk to Ian Brewer, GP in Leeds, with a special interest in liver disease. And you've contributed, I know, to today's report. If I had liver disease, how would I know?
Yes, good afternoon. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know. It's got no symptoms a lot of the time until, as your patient earlier said, you reach the point of needing a liver transplant.
But would I collapse? Would I not be able to eat? What would happen?
Very often no symptoms at all. It may be picked up with an abnormality in a blood test, and Fergus Walsh there has just said that taking action on blood test abnormalities is very important indeed.
Does that mean that sometimes action isn't taken when the results of blood tests come in?
I think sometimes GPs in particular see a slightly abnormal liver test and just say, well, this patient's very overweight, or maybe they're type 2 diabetic, as your patient said, and they just ascribe the problem to that, whereas actually there's more action that could and should be taken.
I'm still not quite clear. So if I want something to worry about, I'll now start worrying about my liver. I think, well, I've been drinking too much for a while, so I want to get it tested out. Can you do that? Can you go to a GP or somewhere else and say, look, have a look at it, will you? I'm a bit worried. Got no symptoms, but thought I'd better check. Is that a reasonable question to ask, or will I be sent packing?
No, absolutely. That's a very reasonable thing to ask. The middle class, middle-aged person who drinks a couple of glasses of wine a night every day of the week may well run into problems with the liver. Going to the GP, asking for a simple liver test, and if there are any abnormalities on that, asking for a suite of tests to be done. It's a very sensible thing to do.
And if the tests come back and say you've got a problem, then you can eat less, drink less, and you can sort it or not?
Well, if it's to do with weight or alcohol consumption, you can absolutely sort it. And there's very good evidence that brief intervention delivered by a nurse or a doctor in the primary care setting can help patients to address excess alcohol intake. And we know that weight loss is something that's difficult to do, but with commitment and with support, people can do it by increasing their exercise and reducing their calorie intake.
Thank you very much. Ian Brew, who is a GP in Leeds. 5:33, time for the news.
On digital, online, smartphone and tablet, this is BBC 5 Live.
The relatives of some of the passengers on board the missing airliner have marched on the Malaysian embassy in Beijing. They're angry about the way the government and the airline have handled the tragedy. The government selling off 7.5% of the part-nationalised Lloyds banking group. It leaves the government with a 25% share as it works to reprivatise the company. President Obama says he's worried Russia will make further incursions into Ukraine after annexing Crimea. He's warned Moscow it will face new sanctions if it continues to encroach. David Cameron's welcomed the news that inflation has fallen to its lowest level in more than 4 years. The Consumer Prices Index dropped to 1.7% in February, largely because of a fall in the cost of petrol and diesel. And a committee of MPs has voted to give the government the power to decriminalise non-payment of the TV licence fee. The plan means there will have to be a review of how any civil penalty would work before the change is introduced. Let's have the sport, Mike.
And it's all eyes on Old Trafford for Derby Day in Manchester.
Great run by Navas. He's quick. He's into the penalty area. There's the cross team. And it's into the net by Nasri. And it's 4-0. Fabulous counter-attacking goal from Manchester City. And this is now an embarrassment for Manchester United.
That was back in September when City comprehensively beat Manchester United 4-1 at the Etihad. Victory for City this evening will see them climb over Liverpool into second place in the Premier League. City boss Manuel Pellegrini, though, says winning the derby isn't the be-all and end-all.
It's always important because when you have two important teams, say City, you always want to be the best team. But we are not just fighting against Manchester United. For me, it doesn't matter. If you tell me tomorrow that we are going to lose the game tomorrow, but we are going to win the title, I prefer to win the title.
Full commentary from Old Trafford in 5 Live Sport from 7 o'clock this evening. If you want coverage of Arsenal against Swansea from the Emirates, that's live on 5 Live Sports Extra. The former Sheffield United and Queen's Park Rangers boss Neil Warnock says he rejected the chance to become Nottingham Forest's new manager because he felt there'd be too much interference from the club's owners. Warnock was widely tipped to replace Billy Davies at the City Ground after his sacking yesterday, but he told BBC Radio Nottingham conditions at the club just weren't right.
I found it very difficult that there was nobody sort of English around the club to speak to that's got football experience, and I do feel it's an area that they'll probably have to look at that. But it wasn't for me at this stage of my career. I just felt that, you know, I'm enjoying myself, and if I couldn't do it how I saw fit, then, you know, I think better leaving it for somebody like Gary Brazil.
Next to Dhaka, where the West Indies have got off the mark at the World 2020, comfortably beating hosts Bangladesh by 73 runs. Charlie Dagnall was watching.
A comfortable victory for the holders, although questions still remain about the form of their star batsman Chris Gayle. For the second time in a row, he was subdued, and we've yet to see the dazzling displays which have made him the most destructive batsman in T20 cricket. He was outshone by his opening partner Dwayne Smith, who struck a stylish 72, helped by atrocious Bangladesh ground fielding. In response, the hosts capitulated in disappointing fashion, undone by the leg spin of Badri and the canny medium pace of Krishmar Santoki. The passion of the 26,000 partisan Bangladesh supporters could not be matched on the field by their team.
Earlier, Ireland's women lost their opening game of the World 2020 against New Zealand by 42 runs. Dan Evans is back in the Great Britain Davis Cup team for next week's quarter-final against Italy, along with James Ward, Andy Murray and Colin Fleming. Evans replaces the 19-year-old Kyle Edmund. After finishing 19th in the women's downhill at the Sochi Winter Olympics last month, the full-time Olympic alpine skier Shemi Olcott has announced her retirement from racing. And in rugby union, the Exeter Chiefs hooker Chris Whitehead has been forced to retire because of a neck injury.
5 Live Sport. Listen digitally or using the BBC iPlayer radio app. For more info, click bbc.co.uk/5live.
Where you'll also find our terms of use.
Let's have a look at the weather. Clear spells over Northern Ireland and southwest England at first, but becoming cloudy as rain moves westward. Overnight lows, a nippy old thing between 1 and 4 Celsius. Tomorrow, the last of the rain will slowly clear from the west to leave sunny spells for money. There'll be rain and sleet over some northern hills, highs reaching 8 to 11 for most. Amy, what's happening on the roads?
Problem still on the M60 at the moment, clockwise, really heavily congested. It just never got back to normal after that earlier accident between 17 and 18. The queues start round now at 6 at Sale. M6 southbound's heavy. There was a broken down vehicle a little bit earlier on. It's been cleared, but it's still slow between 15 for Stoke and 14 for Stafford North. Of course, we've got roadworks there, so that's not helped. M56 emergency repairs are taking place on the westbound carriageway. That's between 8 at Tatton and 9 at Lymm. So as you head away from Manchester, one lane is closed. It's lane 1 of the 3. And if you're on the M25 anti-clockwise, a broken down tanker is blocking one lane at junction 29 at Romford. Lane 1 of the 3 is closed for repairs. Amy Clues, 5 Live Travel.
On digital radio, digital TV, downloads and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
5 Live Drive.
And we're here until 7 o'clock, Adrian and myself. It's nearly 20 to 6 now. The Ministry of Defence should be more open about the way it uses unmanned drones. That's according to a report by the Commons Defence Committee. The MPs say while the UK does act within the law, the MOD should publish details of civilian deaths. 3 years ago, 4 unarmed Afghans died in an attack by a British remotely piloted aircraft. The Armed Forces Minister, Mark Francois, says it was an isolated case.
In 55,000 hours of UK Reaper operations, this has only happened once, and that's a testimony to the skill of the pilots who control these aircraft. And remember, they are controlled by a pilot. There is a person in the loop at all times. In 90% of Reaper operations, they don't release a weapon. Where they do release a weapon, it's only done strictly in accordance with tight rules of engagement.
Let's talk to Air Vice Marshal Sir John Walker, a former Chief of Defence Intelligence. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
And Chris Cole, who runs the campaign website Drone Wars UK, which campaigns against the use of unmanned aircraft. Hello to you.
Hello.
Air Vice Marshal Sir John Walker, then, do you agree that the government should publish the details of any civilians that are killed by drones?
Well, a lot depends on the circumstances, and we're looking at the present moment on Afghanistan. Who knows if the next war is going to be the same thing? But in principle, no, there's no reason to cover it up.
Chris Cole, why do you think this information isn't routinely published?
Well, I mean, we very much welcome this report and welcome the words of the Air Vice Marshal there. I mean, this is something that we've been calling for many years, ever since the UK has begun to use drones in Afghanistan. We've been calling for more transparency and more details about how drones are being used. And it's not just when civilians are being killed. We need to know a lot more about the day-to-day use of armed drones in Afghanistan and the impact that they're having there.
How useful are they, Sir John Walker?
Well, they should be very useful, and they're all part of the overall intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance program. So that would start with satellites from space and go all the way down to people looking with binoculars over a bun to a target somewhere across a field. So it's the whole spectrum. Now they fit into that spectrum. And I think that drones can be very useful things indeed. The problem that I see with drones is not so much the operational stuff that Chris is talking about and I mentioned originally. It's because they are very expensive bits of kit. And there is about a thought that the first answer should be a drone. Why a drone? All because they're cheap and you don't kill pilots, etc., etc., etc. But in fact, they're not cheap. They're extremely expensive.
Do you think that the use of drones means that there will be innocent casualties inevitably?
Well, you've got to be very careful on that. I think that in all form of warfare, the more complicated warfare gets, the more the chance of it happening is it getting what is called blue on blue. You've heard the expression. Now, we had blue on blue in Gulf War I, we had it in Gulf War II, we've had it in Afghanistan. It is extremely distressing, but it is a fact that the battlefield is not a clinical thing. It can be very complex and very confused. And while that happens, you will have blue on blue, regretfully.
Chris Cole, why do you think today's report doesn't mention those unarmed Afghans who died 3 years ago?
Well, I think there's a great deal of suspicion, and the MOD are very reluctant to release information about the use of drones because there's a great deal of suspicion by the public of the kind of increasing use of these unarmed systems, mainly because they lower the threshold when it comes to warfare. We will see much more warfare because of the use of drones, because it lowers the political cost of military intervention. It makes it much easier for politicians to opt for the use of lethal military force rather than engage in long-term diplomatic and political solutions. Okay. And it's not just us who are saying that. Many counter-terrorism officials are now saying that the use of drones is not creating security, just the opposite, in fact. In that dreadful phrase, it's kind of radicalizing populations and is creating more problems than it's solving.
Okay. Thank you both very much.
It's nearly 5:45. President Obama has called on Americans to pray for victims of a mudslide in the US state of Washington. 14 bodies have been recovered since Saturday when a wall of mud hit near the town of Oso near Seattle. Officials say as many as 176 people are still unaccounted for. The US president spoke of his concern during a news conference in the Netherlands.
I would just ask all Americans to send their thoughts and prayers to Washington State and the community of Oso and the families and friends of those who continue to be missing. We hope for the best, but we recognize this is a tough situation.
About 30 homes were destroyed when the mud hit, and more than half the town of Oso is missing. Audio of one of the emergency calls has been released.
There's like a landslide and everything's gone. The houses are gone.
Are there any injuries?
Yes, there's people yelling for help.
One local resident, Marla Jopp, who lives right next to where the disaster struck, says people are trying to come to terms with it all.
It is a very large devastation here. We're just blown away that this happened and that we've lost so many friends, and it's just totally devastating to us. And we're all trying to work together to comfort each other and to try to find the people who have been lost.
We can hear from Mark Clements from the Washington State Emergency Management. Mark, thanks very much for joining us. I'm just looking at some of the photos on our website here, and it's absolute devastation there. I mean, what kind of scale is the rescue or recovery operation at?
There's a lot of responders on scene up in Snohomish County near the town of Oso where this happened. I don't have a number for you on cubic yards, but it has to be millions. The hunk of mountainside that came off and slid into the Stillaguamish River formed a big plug in that river that's still there, and that was a half mile to a mile long. So it was a huge event.
But it seems clear that the chances of finding any more survivors are remote.
Those chances drop with every day. I can tell you, watching the local folks on their news briefing this morning, they're bound and determined to do the best they can today, and until they finally call a halt. And I think we all have heard stories of people who survived for days and days in circumstances like this. So they're not going to give up yet. Yesterday they did find the first living thing they'd found since Saturday was a dog that was still going, and we're hoping we can find some people today.
Is this something anybody was worried about happening? Were there people saying, "Oh, this was an accident waiting to happen," or did it just come completely out of the blue?
They had a landslide in much the same area in 2009 flood event that had been mitigated. Of course, nobody knew, from the residents on up to emergency officials that this was about to happen. Just nature cut loose on a Saturday morning.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much indeed. That was Mark Clements from the Washington State Emergency Management.
12 minutes to 6 now.
This is 5 Live Drive.
Let's have a look at the headlines. Malaysia Airlines has been defending its treatment of the families of those on board the missing plane. President Obama says Russia will face further economic sanctions if it makes another incursion into Ukraine. And the annual rate of inflation has fallen to its lowest level in more than 4 years. Amy, the travel.
Thanks, Adrian. The M60 continues to queue on the clockwise side following an earlier accident. You'll find queues from 6 at Sale on and off through to 18 for Simster Island. M6 southbound and a broken down vehicle has been cleared from between 15 and 14, but because of the roadworks, traffic's still slow. M56 heading out of Manchester, that's the westbound side, and we've got emergency repairs closing lane 1 of the 3 from 8 at Tatton to 9 at Lymm. If you use the M25 anti-clockwise, there was a broken down tanker a little bit earlier on at 29 at Romford. It has gone now, it's been moved to the hard shoulder, but it's still pretty slow. And if you're using the A1M through North Yorkshire, an earlier accident means we have emergency repairs taking place to the central reservation, so it's affecting you both ways between 42 and 43, and traffic's queuing in each direction. Kent, Shalden, you'll find the A258 London Road partially blocked, 2 vehicle accident blocking the road at the street, and in Hazelmere the A286 is closed, that's Grayswood Road, it's closed to recover 2 vehicles following a collision between Lower Road and Brook Lane, and in Devon at Holsworthy the A388 North Road is closed because of an accident at Kingswood Meadow. Amy Clues, 5 Live Travel.
Formula One.
Across the BBC continues this weekend.
The Malaysian Grand Prix.
Australia showed that Mercedes mean business and that both Lewis Hamilton and McLaren's Jenson Button are in with a shout this year. And the young guns are coming through. What will the next round bring us? Who can survive the steaming heat of Malaysia?
Formula One has gone back to the drawing board. New rules, new cars, old school racing.
Formula One, the Malaysian Grand Prix.
This weekend on BBC TV, online, smartphone and tablet. And on BBC Radio 5 Live and 5 Live Sports Extra.
There's at least one listener who has objected to Mike earlier in the sport saying, all eyes on Old Trafford tonight.
Where are his eyes then?
I've forgotten now. I'll find the text. It's York, that's right, yeah. So he was irritated by that. But anyway, I'm going to tell you that our commentary tonight is of the Manchester Derby from 7:45. 5 Live Sport starts at 7, as you know. You can have your say afterwards by calling in on 0500 909 693. And there are also Premier League games at Arsenal and Newcastle, bringing you all the goals from a busy night in the Football League and also Scotland. Mark Pugac here from 7.
Just gone 10 to 6. Police in West Yorkshire say inquiries are continuing after a woman apparently killed herself in a supermarket. Our reporter Rowan Bridge is outside the store in Shipley. What's the scene there now, Rowan?
Well, the store's fully reopened following this morning's events. Police were called here just before 8:40 this morning with reports of a woman with serious injuries in the store. It later became clear that she'd actually killed herself on one of the aisles using a knife at this 24-hour branch of the supermarket. The supermarket was shut for several hours as police interviewed staff, reviewed CCTV, but they now say they're not looking for anyone else in connection.
And what's been the response in the area?
Well, Asda have released a short statement. They said that they are aware of an incident at the Shipley store. They say their thoughts are with the family of the woman involved, and they say their priority now is helping staff at the store and also assisting police with their inquiries.
Thank you very much. Rowan Bridge in Shipley.
Dominic's back with us because Royal Mail have announced they're cutting 1,500 jobs.
It's yet more job cuts after Royal Mail's sort of spree of cutting since 2003. It used to employ 200,000, now it employs 150,000. And basically it's planning to cut, well, if you net out some job creations, about 1,300 jobs. Most of them, interestingly, managerial head office jobs. In the past, they've often cut frontline staff. Not this time. Why? Well, they want to make cost savings of £50 million a year. Says this will achieve half of that, though it does cost this episode £100 million to implement, so they only start gaining money after 2 years. Not unusual. The unions are saying the cuts are ruthless, warning the cuts could spark industrial action. And the company which floated on the stock exchange, you remember, last year, needs to save money, needs to get more competitive, it says, so it can compete in areas like parcels. Steve Hannon is former operations director at Royal Mail and now chief executive of Postal and Logistics Consulting worldwide. Steve, Moya Green, the chief executive, saying they need to slim down to compete. But doesn't all the hard work over the last few years mean that Royal Mail is actually now profitable?
Yes, they are profitable. They've moved into profit, made a very good operating profit last year of £440 million.
So why do they need to do this?
Well, it's not just about profit, of course. It is about it is about productivity and costs and making sure that they can compete effectively, I think, because if you look at Royal Mail, I mean, the letter business is in decline, but even here they're facing competition from not just from competitors such as TNT, who are now delivering in London and Greater Manchester, but more seriously, they've been competing against digital media, emails, etc. over the years. So they need to keep their prices down in that area if they're going to retain any business, and similarly in the parcel area as well.
However, though, you referred to Post letters. I mean, they've been able to do some amazing things every chief executive want to do. They've hived off their pension fund onto the taxpayer. They've raised their stamp costs significantly and cut lots of jobs from the front line in the past. I mean, this is a business that should already be making money, shouldn't it? I mean, it should making enough money. People would say, hasn't enough pain already happened?
Well, they are making money. As I said, they made a reasonable profit last year, and it wasn't so long ago they were making losses. So they have moved into perhaps a more sustained area of profitability. But of course, it's also about the prices they're competing against.
Is Royal Mail generally more expensive than companies like TNT that you refer to?
Well, it's difficult to sort of compare. You're not comparing like for like, because Royal Mail deliver to something like 50 million addresses throughout the UK every day for 6 days a week, whilst TNT are only delivering twice a week in two parts of the country. So,
but that will change, is what you're saying. That these other companies will start to deliver to more and more places across the UK. So Royal Mail need to shape up.
Well, TNT are saying that they are going to expand to other urban areas in the UK. But at the moment, in terms of the total volume of mail that they are dealing with, it's about 1% of the equivalent to about 1% of the volume that Royal Mail delivers. So they've got quite a long way to go. But
still got a big cake to eat themselves for the
That's
time
right.
being. Okay, Thank you very much. Steve Hannon, former ops director at Royal Mail and now chief executive of a consultancy.
Thank you. A couple from Aylesbury are planning to sail around the world for 3 whole years with their 3-year-old daughter. Simon and Kim Brown say they're going to educate Sienna during their travels. Let's speak to Kim now. Hello, Kim.
Hello.
How did you decide you were going to do this then?
I think it's been something that we've been planning for the last 15 years as far as in our heads. It was one of those things that we always wanted to do if we won the lottery. But last October, we became frustrated. It was one of those points in our lives where we wanted some change. And I said to my husband, hey, why don't we just buy the boat and sail around the world?
And what kind of reaction do you get from people when you tell them what your plan is?
Well, we generally get 2 reactions. We get a reaction where people say, wow, that's amazing. I wish I could do that. And then we get a reaction that immediately asks us, what about our daughter? So they look at us and say, but you have a child. Are you bringing her with you?
Right, as if there was any possibility that you were going to leave her behind.
Yeah, my husband always jokes saying, well, if you want to take her, then we can go off, but he's only kidding.
And I bet they ask about school and lessons and missing all that sort of stuff, do they?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and when I first thought about doing it, I was a bit worried about homeschooling. I wasn't sure about whether I could do it or not. So what I did was I went on Amazon and I bought 3 homeschooling books. And after I read those, I felt a lot more confident. And I realized that there are millions of kids out there today that are being homeschooled. So after doing that, I felt a lot more comfortable.
But there must be more to schooling than just going to Amazon and buying 3 homeschooling books and carrying on.
Definitely.
What are we bothering with education and schools and things for if it's that easy?
Some kids don't start school till 6 anyway.
No, quite.
Yes, that's true. A lot of people and a lot of kids in Europe don't start school until 6. But of course, the books about homeschooling weren't about how to necessarily educate as far as the detail. It was more about giving you confidence as to where to get the information. And it also talked about the social side of things. How do you make sure that your child is getting social interaction with other children? And that was a big fear for me. I was afraid that if we did have her on a boat and we were going from port to port, would she find friends?
But all of these seem to be sort of lesser concerns, surely, than how do you stop them falling overboard? I mean, three is a really difficult age when they can get about very well. They're very mobile, but really haven't got any brains yet. Can't sense danger. I mean, you're not. How are you ever going to get any sleep? You'll never be able to relax for worrying, surely.
No, it's okay. We keep her tied down.
Yeah, which is
Kim is so used to these questions, clearly.
Yeah. Come on, think of something original, Victoria. Come on. Think of something Kim hasn't been asked before.
Okay, what about pirates?
Okay, pirates.
Have you been asked that before?
Oh, yeah, I think that's the third question we get asked.
I'm sorry, we're failing.
Can you tell us
miserably.
something you've never been asked before, and we'll ask you?
Well, the other day my mom called me because she watched a program on National Geographic about giant killer-sized squid, and she was worried about that.
So, come on, you must have thought about that, Kim, you and Simon.
About the squid?
Yeah.
Or the pirates?
Both.
They both come. It's a very bad day.
Yeah, exactly. As far as the pirates go, there are very specific places where pirates are, and we will definitely avoid all those places. And then there are places where they are a little bit more dangerous, and what you can do is arrange convoys with other boats, so you go in numbers.
All right, listen, good luck.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully be absolutely amazing.
I hope so.
And we may talk to you as you travel around the world. Thank you.
Coming up on 5 Live.
The former chairman of the Co-op, Paul Flowers, has broken his silence tonight with a wide-ranging BBC interview. We'll get more reaction.
Plus, we'll have a full report from the Oscar Pistorius trial, where the prosecution has now ended its case.
First for breaking news and the best live sport. This is BBC 5 Live.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. This is Drive. Adrian and myself standing in for Peter as he continues his tour of other 5 Live programmes.
Our main story, the head of Malaysia Airlines defends the way his company dealt with the families of those on board the missing plane.
Well, I think it's unfair. I think we've done all we can within our means to help them.
This is Mike Williams with the sport, live outside Old Trafford, where the noisy neighbours are in town for one of the Premier League's biggest fixtures.
There's the cross, and it's into the net by Nasri, and it's 4-0. Ryan Giggs into Owen. Owen for Nature wins the game. Michael Owen.
And on the 5 Live website here, Adam Parsons explained why the Royal Mail is cutting around 1,500 jobs.
This is BBC 5 Live.
Candlelit vigils for those on board flight MH370 are being held in Malaysia. Earlier, Chinese relatives clashed with police in Beijing as they protested about the lack of support from the Malaysian government and the airline. Werner Overdijk is Managing Director of Crisis Plan in Holland. He's worked with teams on several air crashes and told Drive what Malaysia Airlines must do now.
They should initiate a 24/7 help desk and a care desk that provides financial support, provides information, helps them to provide instant care to those in need, to relatives and family members. They should be prepared that this might take at least 5 years.
The government's announced it's selling off 7.5% of the Lloyds banking group. 5 Live's Dominic Laurie explains why.
It would bring the government stake down to 25%. So the gradual process of the privatisation, the reprivatisation back of Lloyds banking group is still underway.
The former chairman of the cooperative bank, Paul Flowers, who resigned following allegations that he bought illegal drugs, says both he and the bank failed its customers. He's given his first broadcast interview since resigning in June last year. The scandal prompted serious questions about his suitability for such a prominent role. He's been speaking to BBC Newsnight.
There have been several months when it has been hellish. You certainly find out who your friends are, because a significant number of people in politics and in the co-op and some in the church have been noticeable by their silence or their absence.
A woman's died after stabbing herself in Asda in Shipley. police sealed off the supermarket, but it's now reopened. David Cameron's welcomed official figures which show inflation fell to 1.7% last month, its lowest level for 4 years. Labour says there's still a cost of living crisis. Our business correspondent is Jonty Bloom.
Falling fuel prices is the main component. We've seen falls in the price of diesel and petrol. We've also seen fall in household energy bills because of some of those changes to the green levies and a mild winter. And then we're seeing an awful lot of competition on the high street as well. So food and drink prices are holding fairly steady. The supermarkets are basically competing like mad.
The prosecution in the trial of Oscar Pistorius has finished presenting its evidence. The televised proceedings have been adjourned until Friday, when the defence will begin its case. The athlete denies murdering his girlfriend. A committee of MPs says the lack of action to tackle liver disease is scandalous. The all-party parliamentary hepatology group says deaths from the disease in England have risen 40% between 2001 and 2012. It's calling for a minimum unit price for alcohol of 50p. Ian Brew is a GP in Leeds and contributed to today's report.
The middle-class, middle-aged person who drinks a couple of glasses of wine a night every day of the week may well run into problems with the liver, going to the GP, asking for a simple liver test, and if there are any abnormalities on that, asking for a suite of tests to be done. It's a very sensible thing to do.
A review of the penalties for failure to pay the TV licence has moved a step closer. A cross-party committee of MPs has voted to give the government the power to decriminalise non-payment. For the sport, let's go to Old Trafford, which is where we find Mike.
Cheers, Adrian. Evening. Welcome to Old Trafford. Yes, I'm standing just outside the stadium on Sir Alex Ferguson Way, to be precise, as we continue the build-up to the 167th Manchester derby. We're still an hour and 45 minutes away from kick-off here, but plenty of fans are already starting to mill about the ground. The burger fans are doing the burger vans are doing a brisk trade, and a couple of scarf sellers are just setting up behind me. It's a pretty miserable evening, though, to be fair. Light drizzle, grey overhead. Not that that's an omen for the home side. David Moyes says Manchester United are full of confidence going into tonight's match. Back-to-back wins has silenced some of the dissenting voices amongst the home fans for now. Victory over their biggest rival City this evening will surely only endear David Moyes to the United faithful that bit more, whilst the win for City will see them leapfrog Liverpool and go into second place. We'll have full commentary here from Old Trafford in 5 Live Sport from 7 o'clock. On 5 Live Sports Extra this evening, you can hear Arsenal against Swansea. Elsewhere, the defending champions, the West Indies, have comprehensively beaten Bangladesh by 73 runs in their Super 10 World 2020 match in Dhaka. Earlier, Ireland's women lost their opening game of the World 2020 against New Zealand by 42 runs. And Dan Evans is back in the Great Britain Davis Cup team for next week's quarter-final against Italy.
5 Live Sport. Listen digitally or using the BBC Sport app. For more info, click bbc.co.uk/sport.
Where you'll also find our terms of use.
The weather, the rain will clear tonight in the west. It will be a cold night because there's not going to be much cloud around tomorrow. Any bits of rain left will go away and there will be sunshine for lots of people, but it still won't be that hot or warm even. Highs between 8 and 11.
On the roads, the M60 is still really slow at the moment. There was an accident earlier. It has long since gone, but obviously lots of football traffic joining in with the rush hour congestion, so it's very slow from 6 at Sale through to 18 for Simster Island, and the M25 anti-clockwise queues because of an accident earlier between 22 and 21A.
BBC Radio 5 Live is also available through your digital TV.
Sky, Freeview, Freesat, YouView and Virgin Media
are just some of the ways you can listen.
Good evening, welcome to Drive with Adrian Chiles and Victoria Derbyshire. We'll have more soon on that interview with the former Co-op Bank chairman, Paul Flowers, but our main story this evening, the head of Malaysia Airlines has tried to regain the trust of the families whose relatives were on board flight MH370. Many are becoming increasingly angry and frustrated at the way they feel they've been treated and by the continuing lack of concrete evidence about the plane's fate.
Earlier in Beijing, a group of relatives clashed with police during a mass demonstration outside the Malaysian embassy. But Malaysia Airlines chief executive has defended his company's handling of the crisis. He's been speaking to our reporter Alistair Leithhead.
Our primary role in this tragedy is really to ensure we really take care of the family of those on board. And I think we've gone beyond our normal responses.
I think they would say you haven't gone far enough. Their response has been very angry and has been targeted at you.
Well, I think it's unfair. I think we've done all we can within our means to help them. Normally in any tragedy there's always some evidence in place. We have not had any evidence until maybe last night.
So are you 100% sure your plane is lost?
Based on the evidence provided to us, yes.
So what do you say to the families who say, no, you're hiding something, loved ones are still alive?
I think there's a high degree of certainty that's actually provided by the AAIB to basically conclude this particular evidence.
Well, the search area has now been significantly narrowed, but stormy weather is preventing the 26 countries involved in the operation from getting any closer to possible debris. Let's talk to Pam Dix, who lost her brother Peter in the Lockerbie bombing in December 1988. She's now Executive Director of Disaster Action. Now, that's a charity set up by survivors and bereaved people from several previous disasters. And Pam, the motivation for that, I assume, is because there wasn't enough help for you.
Good evening, Victoria. Yes, certainly back in the late 1980s, there were no dedicated communication channels, no real understanding that foremost the relatives need information about what's going on. And where there is a vacuum, as there is for the families affected by the Malayan disaster, that vacuum will be filled by conspiracy theories. Different ideas will gain credence around the world, and this can only add to the distress that they feel. So certainly the focus of disaster action has been very much on looking at these situations from the perspective of those directly affected, and to put them at the forefront of what is being done.
How is it possible to give relatives information when there is so little?
Well, some of our members have been affected by incidents whereby, for example, the ship sank without trace, and only many years later was any debris recovered, and those killed were never recovered. And in those sets of circumstances, the very least that should be done is dedicated sets of communication channels whereby families can at least be appropriately informed about what is being done to try and recover the debris, to try and get information. And that those communication channels should be set up and with regular communication. And even to be told there is no further information. And this is why, and this is what we're continuing to do, would have done something for the families from the very outset. The difficulty now for the Malaysian authorities is that so much time into the disaster, it will be very difficult to re-establish trust. Something may still be able to be done, but this is a critical time, I think, now.
Thank you for talking to us. That's Pam Dix, who is the Executive Director of Disaster Action. For lots of other families who've lost loved ones in air disasters in the past, the events of the last few days have been a traumatic reminder of their own loss. Marta Kochanowska-Hodder lost her father, who was chief of Poland's National Bureau for Civil Rights, in a plane crash in 2010. 96 people died, including the President of Poland, his wife, and many other prominent leaders from Poland. Marta is also co-founder of a foundation that specifically helps the children of victims of such disasters. I spoke to her earlier and she explained how she learned of her own father's death.
My father died on 10th of April 2010 in the Smolensk airplane crash that was taking the Polish president and various number of dignitaries and Polish representatives to the Katyń massacre memorial and the 70th anniversary memorial. And the plane crashed in the early hours of the morning in Russia.
And why did that happen?
Well, to this day, and it's coming up to 4 years since the crash, we don't know why the crash happened. And even 2 or 3 days ago, we've had confirmation that parts of the official report prepared by the Russian investigation team have been incorrect. So unfortunately, I can't give you the answer of why the crash happened.
But how do you reconcile the fact that you still don't know why your father died all these years on?
We don't, and unfortunately we at the moment see how the families in the Malaysian crash are dealing with the news and are very much sympathising with what they're going through, because unless you are given very clear and transparent information from the start, then you can't really accept what has happened and move on. It's incredibly difficult, and you relive the trauma of what has happened pretty much daily, which just compounds the grief and difficulties that the families face.
Having gone through what you have been through, what would you say to those relatives who are waiting to find out why the Malaysian plane crashed?
It's going to be an incredibly difficult time for them at the moment, and the only way we got through the days was by being together, is in terms of family being together and in terms of being with other families. They will find strength in themselves and from other families of the relatives. It's every person goes through this completely differently. Members of one family will all go through this differently, but together they will be able to find common questions and hopefully find some kind of common answers. But it's a very, very long haul for them, especially with all that they have to face, with waiting to find any debris. Whether there will be any potential of finding any bodies is obviously highly questionable in that case. I just feel incredible sympathy for them, because it's a very, very long journey ahead of them.
You will have seen their anger and their frustration today. Can you relate to that?
Absolutely. I have been experienced firsthand how if an investigation and the process is not done correctly, and how if the families are not a priority, or even when you try to make the families a priority but don't engage specialists in that process, then the families will, 4 years on, feel just as confused, just as hurt, and will just not be able to move on with their life.
I understand that you were able to hold a funeral for your father. How important was that to you?
It was incredibly important, and we have had a very private family funeral and then an official funeral following day. But to be able to do it how he would have wished it, in the church that he attended, with our family and friends, although a lot of our friends had been actually on the plane with him, it was very, very important for us to be able to do that. Also, what was very important is for us to do that without cameras present. So I see how the families react in front of the cameras and how difficult it must be for them. Although there was many things that went wrong with our investigation, we had been lucky in the sense that we had complete flexibility of not going in front of any cameras for the immediate aftermath after the crash.
That was Marta Kochanowska-Hodder. It's 6:15, time for the headlines.
This is 5 Live Drive.
The Malaysian government has defended its treatment of relatives after concluding that the missing airliner crashed into the southern Indian Ocean. President Obama's warning Moscow will face further economic sanctions if it continues to encroach on Ukraine. And the government selling off another 7.5% of the Lloyds banking group. Amy, the travel?
Thanks, Adrian. Still got the long queues on the M60 at the moment. There was an accident earlier on this evening, which has long since cleared between 17 and 18. Those queues start well back to junction 6 at Sale, though all lanes have reopened. Also, anti-clockwise on the M60 between 13 for Worsley and 12 at Eccles interchange. One lane's blocked by an accident, lane 1 in the 4-lane section. If you use the M25 this evening, clockwise, 2 lanes are blocked by an accident. That's between the QE2 bridge with queues back to junction 30 for Lakeside, and also anti-clockwise, we've still got those queues because of an accident earlier, 22 to 21A, and also queues around 29 at Romford. There's a broken down tanker blocking off one lane. Amy Clues, 5 Live Travel.
Ryan moves in and bowls to Malinga, who swipes high into the sky. This could be it for the West Indies. The man underneath it, who takes the catch.
62 tournament matches, 22 days. The ICC World 2020, Bangladesh 2014. Ball-by-ball commentary.
This week on 5 Live Sports Extra.
The West Indies celebrate a well-deserved triumph in this World 2020.
For full listings, go to bbc.co.uk/5live.
Five Live Sport will come from Old Trafford tonight for one of the games of the season. Mark Pugac is there. I mean, there's been some amazing fixtures this season, but I mean, this is yet another one right up there, Mark.
Well, it is, and as we would all know and normally expect, it's both of them going for the title, but everybody knows the situation with Manchester United this season. But they've had a better week, haven't they, Adrian, beating Olympiacos and West Ham at the weekend, and they'll be doing everything they can to derail Manchester City's title bid this evening. City, of course, with these games in hand, so a real chance for them, if they can win this evening, to put some pressure on Liverpool and Chelsea above them. So the stage is set. Still, I think the definition of optimism outside, Adrian, you've seen it enough times, but I can't see anybody buying those half and half Manchester United, Manchester City scarves. I really would look, we all admire entrepreneurial spirit, don't we? But I think that's taking it a little bit too far. I think someone's going to have a loft full of them at the end of the night.
Well, I suppose if there's a neutral who's come over from somewhere to watch the game, then it's a nice little memento for them.
Is it? No, it is. I take your point, but I'm not sure that actually those who have access to a ticket, whether they be red or blue, are going to be giving them up easily enough to a neutral this evening.
I've got a Hull versus West Brom half and half scarf for sale if anybody wants it. I paid 25 quid for someone to take it off my hands.
Yeah.
So what else on tonight?
So we've got that, and we've got Arsenal-Swansea, which is live on Sports Extra, of course. Arsene Wenger having described the 6-0 as an accident. He's had a few accidents recently, hasn't he, Arsene, in a big game? So we'll be talking about that. Pretty full programme, of course, in the Football League as well. Some really key matches going on there. So a night of football which has a lot of implications around the country.
Thanks, Mark. We've got former England international Chris Waddle is part of our commentary team. Amazing to see, Chris, that Man City are 5-4 favourites to win this game. Favourites at Old Trafford. What's the world coming to?
Well, I just think that the form of Manchester United this season, there's teams come here who would have got good odds, who've had great results here this season. So it's not the fortress this season as it's been over the years. City will come here with a lot of confidence. They had a good, comfortable victory at the weekend. Man United's had 2 wins, but it's here's where the problem is. How the players got the pressure, they feel the pressure of the crowd. Expectations are always high at Old Trafford, and City are coming here full of confidence. And I think if you're a United fan tonight, you just don't want them to sit on the back foot like they did against Liverpool, where they got really hammered that day, and they want them to have a go. I think fans will put up with it if the team take the ball forward and push City back and have a go at them. I think that what they don't want is to sit deep and let City dictate the game, because if they do that, there's only going to be one winner.
Well, but on the other hand, if United do win, then who's to know they can't put some kind of dramatic late charge on to get in the top 5 or even the top 4. And for sure, they'll be doing Man City no favours in their title race. So in terms of getting a feel-good factor back at Old Trafford, this is the night for them to try and do it.
No, I totally agree. If there's any, the fans are looking, they obviously wanted to beat Liverpool, big rivals as well, a few weeks ago, but Liverpool came here in terrific form and they showed it. They were different class that day. So yeah, it's a big game for United, and City now, listen, they've got the games in hand. We know what they've got to do. They know what they've got to do to get above Chelsea, and this is a massive game like the weekend is against the Arsenal away. So City know what they've got. They've got a very good squad. They look after the ball very, very well, and they are a fantastic team. But listen, Man United, as they showed at the weekend, and they showed against Olympiacos last week, when they're on the front foot, they're a very, very good side.
Thanks, Chris. Our Mike Williams is outside Old Trafford. What's the mood music there? Who's the most confident out of the Blues and the Reds?
I would say the Blues, from the ones I've spoken to so far, actually, Adrian. The team bus has just driven past us with a complete police escort. But I'm just standing outside one of the United fan pubs, and they are in raucous voice. And I've got a couple of fans here in front of me, James and John. Let's start with John. Score prediction this evening?
2-1 United.
You're feeling confident?
Confident, yeah, no problem.
Is this the biggest derby in the Premier League?
Of course it is, of course, yeah, in the world, yeah.
And James, last time out here, one man dominated and stole all the headlines, Robin van Persie. Of course, he's out tonight. Can you still win it without him?
To be honest, I'll be happy with a draw tonight. I have to be fair, a draw will do me.
What's the best United can hope for this season? Can you still squeeze into top 4?
No, we're going to win the European Cup, so it doesn't matter about the league. It's full stop. Doesn't matter about the league at all. We're going to win the European Cup and knock them Scousers off that perch yet again.
Ironically, it's Liverpool who could be cheering for you tonight, because if you take some points off City, then the title suddenly goes into Liverpool's hands.
And extremely ironically, that's half why I hope we get a draw tonight. How bad is that? But that's just how it is at the moment.
So you're predicting a draw, you're going for a 2-1 win.
Yeah, for United Jet, yeah.
And a final word with you, James, on David Moyes. You're standing by your man going into next season?
I'll stand by him for a little bit longer yet, and then we'll see what happens at the end of the season. When he wins the European Cup, it'll be an absolute diamond.
Optimism is prime here, Adrian, going into kick-off. We're still an hour and 15 away, and it is starting to pour with rain, I have to say. But the fans are in good voice ahead of kick-off. What the mood is like come full-time, we shall see.
Thanks, Mike. 5 Live Sport coming up after Drive at 7 o'clock this evening.
6:22. At the trial of Oscar Pistorius in South Africa, the athlete's lawyer has been trying to show that his client was in a loving relationship with his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. The focus today has been on the text messages they sent to one another in the time before he shot her. Oscar Pistorius denies murder and says he killed his girlfriend because he thought she was an intruder. Let's talk to our Southern Africa correspondent Karen Allen, who's been in court for 5 Live. And I understand the state effectively wrapped up its case today, Karen.
That's right, Victoria, and they called just a quarter of the 107 witnesses that had available, and it's left us with a bit of a cliffhanger. We still don't know 100% whether Oscar Pistorius will take the stand on Friday. They're having a short break. Brian Webber from his legal team told us that we have no choice. It's a question of when. Apparently the decision's not yet been made. And very, very briefly, we had a chance to speak to Oscar Pistorius, and when asked if he was ready to give evidence, he said in a whisper, it's a tough time, and he added, we've got a lot ahead of us. Well, given the past 15 days of prosecution, the stress is very much showing on the athlete.
And tell us about this exchange of text messages then.
Well, what we've seen is a decisive and really concerted effort by Barry Roux for the defence, wanting to show that 90% of the text messages exchanged between Riva and Oscar Pistorius were of a loving nature. And he's trying to neutralise some of the prosecution damage from yesterday, which revealed at times a turbulent relationship between the couple. Now, he put it to cell phone expert Francois Moller that he had been selective in the texts that he'd analysed, saying that only about 4 out of more than 1,700 showed them having a dispute. Most, he said, showed evidence of a normal relationship, and he gave this as a flavour of some of the loving text messages that were shared with us. The cell phone expert here is being asked to read out loud some of the text messages in court.
I miss you more, and I miss you one more than you miss me. That's the next day. At the next page, 488.
That's correct, my lady.
That's now on 11th, 10 o'clock at night, 10:30.
Yes.
Where it says, from Mr. Pistorius to Riva, I miss you one more than you miss me always, and it comes back from her saying impossible.
Now, as if to underline the point, the court was also shown grainy CCTV footage of the couple kissing in a supermarket just 10 days before Riva was shot dead. Barry Roux for the defence was also at pains to demonstrate that on occasions when the couple had a dispute, they were able to resolve it pretty quickly and revert to their sweet-talking texts.
The message just underneath that, what does that say? There was now that unhappiness, and then what does it say?
My lady, the date and time on that message is on the 8th at 10:27 in the morning. It's an outgoing message from the deceased to the accused, and the message reads, "Morning Aussie," and a smile.
And he responds?
His response at 12:18, incoming message was for the deceased was "Morning Baba."
And then it goes on, how's your day going? Again resolved.
That's correct, my lady.
Yeah.
And I think one witness was called back to give further evidence today?
That's right. You remember we've had forensic witnesses, we've had blood spatter experts, we've had ballistics experts. Well, today police officer Gerhard Vermeulen was called back into the witness box. We can describe him as the cricket bat expert, if you like. He was cross-examined by the defence, who were trying to demonstrate flaws in the police investigation of the crime scene, and in particular the bathroom door, which Oscar Pistorius said he had struck with a cricket bat as he tried to come to Riva's aid. Vermeulen had testified earlier about 2 marks on this door, which he believed were caused by the cricket bat. But the defence said he didn't examine a 3rd mark. Now, Vermeulen said that he'd not looked at it because he was only looking at marks he could physically link to the cricket bat.
I did not physically do a physical match with a top mark, my lady, no.
What did you do in relation to that mark?
I had a look at the mark, my lady, and I could not link, excuse me, I could not link the bed with that mark, or I could not see from the mark that it could have come from the bed or being made by the bed, as I could see with the other marks. So I did not do a physical match there, my lady.
Now, the prosecution alleged that the mark was not made by a cricket bat, but we understand that the defence's own experts will contradict this, shedding more light on Reeva Steenkamp's final moments. Now, of course, the defence start making their case on Friday after a 2-day break for consultations. All eyes, of course, will be on Oscar Pistorius and whether indeed, as is widely predicted, he will take the stand.
Thank you. Karen Allen reporting.
The former chairman of the cooperative bank, Paul Flowers, who resigned amid allegations he bought cocaine, has said both he and the bank failed its customers. Paul Flowers made the comments to the BBC in his first broadcast interview since he resigned. He also says government intervention contributed to the problems at the bank. The 63-year-old was filmed allegedly handing over £300 for cocaine and discussing buying other illegal drugs. The scandal prompted questions about his suitability for such a prominent role. The interview will be broadcast on Newsnight later this evening. Dominic Laurie is here. Remind us about Paul Flowers. How did he get the job at the Co-op?
Well, he got the job at the Co-op by means that aren't really the same as other big FTSE 100 companies, i.e. you're elected by your peers, by members of the Co-op and by people on sort of higher committees. So that's a pertinent question. He ended up being a big figure both within the bank and the group. He was the chairman of the cooperative bank, which of course, although slightly separate from the rest of the group, was linked to it. He also had a senior position at the group as a whole. Now, the Co-op problem started last year, you'll remember, and then no sooner had it been found that there was a sort of a black financial hole in the bank, then this story emerged. Video footage obtained by a tabloid newspaper apparently showing him counting out £20 notes, giving them to a rent boy to buy hard drugs, including crystal meth and crack cocaine. And questions were also asked about how he came to be appointed to lead the bank, which he left in June last year. Now, in this interview, he talked about his life since the scandal broke.
There have been several months when it has been hellish. But during that process, I've actually been very well supported by a raft of very good friends. You certainly find out who your friends are, because a significant number of people in politics and in the Co-op and some in the church have been noticeable by their silence or their absence.
Yeah, he also talks about government pressure on the Co-op to buy some Lloyds branches. You may remember the Co-op had planned to buy 631 branches from Lloyd Banking Group last year, but the deal collapsed before the Co-op capital shortfall was revealed. Now, Paul Flowers says, this is interesting, the government expressed its anxiety to him for the deal to go through.
Regular calls, regular checks to see whether or not we were progressing well, and I mean 2 or 3 times a week calls from the junior minister. They wanted a deal, and they wanted us to do it. They might say no now, but I know that that was what they wanted, and that was the pressure they were applying.
Okay, well, this is interesting. The Treasury have responded to that in the last half hour. Treasury sources have said that the Project Verde process, which was this process of the Co-op trying but failing to buy these Lloyds branches, was decided by the Lloyds board, not by government, is the implication there. And it's made it clear its decisions were entirely commercial. Now, the Treasury also point to the fact that independent review into the cooperative bank will take place after the Prudential Regulation Authority, which is one of these Bank of England bodies that regulates the system, has concluded its enforcement investigation. And sources have told the BBC they don't intend to preempt that review. I've also spoken to the cooperative group to try and get some comment, and they have said no comment.
Dominic Laurie.
It's 6:31.
On digital, online, smartphone and tablet, this is BBC 5 Live.
The head of Malaysia Airlines says the company is doing all it can to support the families of those on board the missing plane. Many relatives are becoming increasingly angry and frustrated at their treatment by the airline and the Malaysian government. The government says it's selling off 7.5% of the partly nationalised Lloyds Banking Group. It's part of plans to fully return the bank to the private sector. The rate of inflation has fallen to 1.7%, its lowest figure in more than 4 years. The drop is mainly due to cheaper petrol and diesel and lower household energy bills. The government's welcomed the news, but Labour says there's still a cost of living crisis. The prosecution in the trial of Oscar Pistorius in South Africa has finished presenting its evidence. The defence will begin outlining its case on Friday. He denies murdering his girlfriend. And a group of MPs has described a lack of action to tackle liver disease in the UK as scandalous. Deaths from liver disease in England rose by 40% between 2001 and 2012. With the sport, Mike's at Old Trafford for us.
Adrian, thank you. Yes, good evening. Welcome from a very wet Old Trafford. We are building up to the 167th Manchester derby this evening. We're just off Sir Alex Ferguson Way outside one of the many fan pubs here as we build up to kick off 7:45 this evening. Full commentary on 5 Live Sport. Alan Green is already inside Old Trafford.
Well, there's no question that United have taken an enormous lift from winning their last 2 games, especially not conceding a goal in those games. But I think it's still hard to make a strong case for the champions beating their title-chasing rivals tonight. They've defenders missing injured, Vidic is still suspended, Van Persie could be away 5 or 6 weeks. And though City are without Aguero, Company has served his suspension, and you can cope with the odd misfiring forward when Yaya Toure has contributed a magnificent 20 goals from midfield. City will want to win, they'll expect to win, perhaps the smart money is on a draw.
Alan, thank you. Full commentary then from 7:45 this evening. All the build-up with Mark Pugach and the team from 7. Just talking to some of the fans here this evening, Adrian. Most of them, whatever colour, are in confident mood. Let's just have a very quick chat with you. So you were telling me your name is?
Charlton.
After?
Sir Bobby, yeah.
Have you ever met him?
I haven't. Oh, yeah, quite. When I was younger, yeah. A lot younger.
And your score prediction this evening, quickly?
I'll go for 2-1 to United.
And your cousin here, Billy, is manning the burger store. Billy, you were saying you're standing by your man. You're being very loyal to your manager.
Yes.
You're a Moyes in man.
Yes, definitely. I think you've got to give him till next season to find out the best of him, and I'm sure he will come. Yeah, he'll buy his own team, and that's what he needs to do, really. Put his own stamp on it.
Good stuff. Many thanks, guys. So full commentary here from Old Trafford in 5 Live Sport from 7 o'clock. On 5 Live Sports Extra this evening, we have live commentary from the Emirates as Arsenal host Swansea, and John Murray is there.
Well, it's going to be an evening for gauging the mood at the Emirates, I think, after what for Arsenal and Arsene Wenger were the embarrassing events at Stamford Bridge 3 days ago. Wenger says in his column in tonight's match programme that there is, quote, no rational explanation for the 6-0 defeat other than the quality of the opponents and that Arsenal were caught at the start of the game. And he adds that they don't really know why that happened and says they need to analyse it. I have a feeling that won't satisfy a good number of Arsenal supporters. So tonight, Wenger is looking for a response. The problem is that Swansea City too have plenty to play for. They're just 4 points above the relegation zone. So Arsenal-Swansea here. And the evening's other Premier League match is Newcastle-Everton, and Peter Slater's there.
And Everton still harbour hopes of making the Champions League, although at 8 points adrift of Arsenal in 4th, even with the game in hand, it's a tall order. So they'll possibly make the Europa League, and I reckon Roberto Martinez will embrace that. Newcastle will just embrace finishing 8th, especially following their indifferent start. They were in the bottom 5 after Everton beat them 3-2 at Goodison back in September. No definite team news here, but Newcastle may well be unchanged as Alan Pardew watches from the training ground, whilst Phil Jagielka's travelled and could return for Everton after 4 games out with a hamstring strain.
There's also a full fixture list in the Championship this evening with big games at the top and the bottom of the table. Let's start at the leaders. Leicester, they take on Yeovil, and Peter Drury is there.
Yes, 10 years out of the Premier League, and this is the first of 10 games Leicester have left to secure an absolute maximum of 13 points, which they currently need to return to it. It's a matter of time, surely. They are 17 league games unbeaten, and Yeovil come here some 50 points behind them, labouring to get above the relegation line. It is anticipated, if not quite confirmed, that the Leicester manager Nigel Pearson, who fell ill over the weekend, will be on site to take charge for a night on which, as top plays next to bottom, he will assume nothing but expect much.
Peter, thank you. Leicester meet Burnley at the weekend. This evening, Burnley are at home to Doncaster. Elsewhere, managerless Nottingham Forest take on Charlton. 5 Live Sport from 7 will keep you right up to date with all the matches taking place this evening. Just briefly then from Old Trafford, a few other lines this evening, and the defending champions, the West Indies, have comprehensively beaten Bangladesh by 73 runs in their Super 10 World 2020 match in Dhaka. Dan Evans is back in the Great Britain Davis Cup team for next week's quarter-final against Italy, and after finishing 19th in the women's downhill at the Sochi Winter Olympics last month, the 4-time Olympic alpine skier Shemi Olcott has announced her retirement today from racing.
5 Live Sport. Listen digitally or using the BBC iPlayer radio app. For more info, click bbc.co.uk/5live.
Where you'll also find our terms of use.
So look at the weather. Clear spells over Northern Ireland and southwest England at first. It'll get cloudy as rain moves westward, though. Overnight lows between 1 and 4 Celsius. Tomorrow, last of the rain will slowly clear from the west to leave sunny spells for many, though there'll be rain and sleet over some northern hills. Highs reaching 8 to 11 for most. Amy, what's happening on the roads?
The M6 is still really slow at the moment on the clockwise side. A combination of an accident earlier, the football traffic, and the sheer weight. It's slow from around about junction 6 at Sale all the way through to 18 for Simster. M6 southbound, there was a broken down vehicle between 15 and 14. That's Stoke and Stafford North. It's gone, but the roadworks have also added to that one, so really slow. And the M56 as you head out of Manchester, we've got some emergency repairs taking place, so you can expect delays from 8 at Tatton to 9 at Lymm.
On digital radio, digital TV, downloads and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
5 Live Drive.
It's nearly 20 to 7. Good evening. Let's go back to the search for the Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. Comparisons have been drawn with the Air France crash back in 2009 when an Airbus carrying 228 people from Rio to Paris crashed into the Atlantic. No one survived, and it took salvage crews nearly 2 years to find the plane's black box, but they did find it. Colleen Keller was head of the investigation into that accident. Colleen, I know you're critical in some ways of this particular operation to find the missing Malaysian plane. What mistakes are being made in your view?
Well, I don't mean to be critical. This is an awfully difficult search, and it's difficult to even draw comparisons with the Air France search, which was in a much smaller area and was much better understood before we even went underwater. But in this search, it looked like when the Malaysians were running it in particular, that it was fairly chaotic, and they were really grasping at whatever data they could get and not doing a methodical search plan. Now, granted, they didn't have, they had a lot of data that was all over the place, so it's very difficult to understand how you might conduct the search. But I think the Malaysians have never been faced with something of this magnitude before, and they were a bit overwhelmed in the beginning.
And is that understandable?
Oh, I think absolutely. I mean, this is, even for the experts, this would have been a very difficult one. I know that they're having assistance from the NTSB here in the States and the French Commission from the BEA that oversaw the search for Air France 447 is also consulting with the Malaysians and trying to give them advice, especially lessons learned from the Air France search on how to conduct the search. And I think that now that the Australians are overseeing the maritime search, things are appearing to go much more methodically. How would you describe the search thus far, though? Well, it's been characterized by really difficult situation. We have, we're looking in the middle of the ocean. It's about as remote as the Air France problem, or even more remote. The weather is not cooperating at all. It's particularly difficult right now. We can't even get search crews in the air to look at the area. Hopefully it'll clear up. The fact that we had data that sent us over the continent and then down into the ocean, and we couldn't figure out which way for quite a while, certainly didn't help. We couldn't rule anything out until we had hard evidence that it went south. So we had to keep the northern route open, and that kind of spread our assets very thin. Thank you very much for talking to us. That's Colleen Keller, who was head of the investigation into the Air France accident in 2009.
It's 19 minutes to 7. The lack of action to tackle liver disease in the UK is scandalous, according to a group of MPs. The cross-party group says deaths from the condition rose by 40% in England between 2001 and 2012. Elsewhere in Europe, death rates are going down.
There are three main reasons for the disease: alcohol, obesity and viral hepatitis. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh explained why the figures in the UK are so bad.
One of the reasons is the UK is one of the few countries where alcohol consumption has really soared in the last 50 years. Now, you combine that with the fact that we're the fattest nation in Europe, and that begins to explain it. Well, this all-party group, they want a minimum unit price for alcohol in England of 50 pence. And they want things like more blood tests, more ultrasound scans, things that can actually pick up liver disease years before it becomes untreatable. And also on the third tier, they want hepatitis B vaccination, common in other countries, but not here, universal, and a strategy to eradicate hepatitis C, where there are drugs now that can effectively cure it.
Let's speak to someone who knows exactly what we're talking about. Dave Caulfield developed chronic cirrhosis of the liver 10 years ago and eventually had to have a liver transplant. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
What was the origin of your problems? What caused it?
Yes, drinking far too much over too long a period.
How much is far too much, if you don't mind me
Well,
asking?
starting off as a young man, quite easily 5 and 6 pints in an evening, but saying that, at the time then, of course, affording-wise, that was only 2 and 3 nights a week. But obviously, over the years, my capacity in relation to that increased. I've always been a guy, I've had a professional job, I've been in the police. I've always thought I was coping quite well with what I drank. I never got into trouble, never had any problems whatsoever. I would drink 5, 6 pints. That increased over the years to sometimes I could go out in an evening and drink 8, 9, 10 pints. And again, used to pride myself, perhaps it's a bit of a guy thing, that I'd never got into trouble, never fell over. But looking back on it at the time, and what I've been told since I had my liver transplant is over the years, I've scarred my liver continually over that long period.
And what was the first you knew of it?
The first I knew of it was 2 months before I was diagnosed with chronic cirrhosis, and that I got a little bit of yellow in the corner of my eye. And then I've been told since it was too late anyway. I'd put a lot of weight on, which was down, as I thought at the time. I'd had a fall and crushed my 4th lumbar vertebrae, and I went up to 22 stone in weight. I've always been a big guy. I used to play rugby. But again, I normally weighed about 17 stone. But this increase in weight, I put down to my liver, and sorry, not my liver, my back being broken.
Mm-hmm.
And then in August 2002, got the yellow in the corner of my eye. November, I went yellow. I was George Best colour, head to foot, as quick as that. And I think that the message that the report tries to get over as well is to say, please, please, get your liver checked out somewhere on the line. Most people know in relation to alcohol whether they are drinking too much or too little. This report just says a basic thing like a liver function test, which could be done as part of a well-man or well-woman clinic, can give a person a steer, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to admit that you have been drinking too much.
No.
Generally, people do know, though, in their own heart of hearts.
They do know, and if they went for a test...
Test, it's so simple.
No, but they wouldn't... I'm not sure you'd want to know the reality.
Yeah.
Well, the other reality is, I lost 7 stone in 6 months because my liver wasn't working properly. I got what was called hepatic encephalopathy, which basically was waking up once a month and then ended up in hospital because it was like a stroke. I couldn't speak, I couldn't talk because the liver wasn't working to take the normal toxins out of my bloodstream. And I was dying. And it was as quick as that, from being 2002 diagnosed to starting to die after that. It had just failed me completely.
I mean, it seems extraordinary that the first identifiable symptoms, and it's not as if you can say there was a GP missing anything really, because there was, but you get the first symptom and it's kind of too late.
It was too late. And that's the whole thing that people don't realise. I think people think with liver disease that you will get some sort of warning that, you might wake up one morning and, something might manifest itself. It doesn't. There's no chance. And again, the most important thing I think has come out of that report is pushing forward for a blood test. And as part and parcel of a clinic, of any well-man clinic or any well-woman clinic. And I think it's so important that. They've also advocated, of course, the scanning of livers. But again, the more effective is that simple blood test. And again, it's making people aware. I mean, the limits... I'll be very honest, the limits at the time in relation to drinking, how much you can a week, I poo-pooed them. You think, it doesn't apply to me because nothing was wrong with me. I was functioning quite properly. But of course, They are there, and it's quite clear that if you do go over those limits within a week, you've got the potential of causing damage to your liver.
It's really interesting because you are actually a victim of your own capacity to take alcohol.
Very much so.
If you'd have been falling over or being sick after pint 5 or fainting or something after pint 8 or waking up with somebody else after sort of pipe 10, do you know what I mean? Then you would have had warnings, but because it never really affected you.
It didn't. As I say, maybe it's just a bloke thing, I don't know. You got to a capacity, well, I'm fine. I mean, even I could get to, say, drinking 8 and 9 pints and think, right, I've had enough. And I could still walk home. But then I should have realised, really, I had a problem when I'm putting that much alcohol away. And again, an adage for liver recovery is my father, who was 75, God bless him, he had a thrombosis behind his eye one day. He has passed away now, but he went to the doctors to have the thrombosis, and they just happened to do a liver function test. And he was told that he had to stop drinking to give his liver a chance to recover.
As you talk, Dave, I swear my liver is starting to throb. I'm sure it's psychosomatic. We can speak to Professor Graham Foster, a liver specialist at Barts Health NHS Trust. And I would suggest, Professor Foster, that you're just saying, well, thank God somebody's on national radio actually talking about this and telling it how it is.
Absolutely. We're all seeing far, far too many people coming into our casualty departments and, exactly as Dave says, with their livers completely destroyed. And the tragedy for me is that this is all entirely preventable. If we pick people up early, we can intervene, we can give sensible advice on drinking, and we can stop it. So my mission, I'm afraid, is to abolish liver disease, put myself out of work, get people tested early, and save the NHS a fortune.
The thing is, if you go into a GP surgery and say, look, I smoke, then they'll say, well, you need to give up or cut down or something. If you say you're eating too much fatty food or your cholesterol's high, they'll say, we'll ease up a bit, or we might give you statins. I mean, I've always been very honest about how much I drank, which isn't a massive amount, but probably more than the recommended level. I don't recall, and no disrespect to my GPs, have all been brilliant in other respects, I don't recall a GP saying, I'll tell you what, let's give you a blood test and have a look at what's going on with your liver.
I think that's the real problem that we have. We have this odd approach to alcohol, and like everyone else, I like a drink every now and then, but it needs to be kept under tight control. And everyone starts by intending to have a good time with alcohol, and then, as Dave suggests, they drift a little bit over the edge. They become tolerised to it. It's a very addictive drug. It's a very social drug, and you end up drinking every day, and very quickly you get into trouble. And the difficulty, as you say, is that GPs, unless they really probe hard, will miss that. So I would very strongly support the recommendations that we've heard from the All-Parliamentary Group, which is we need to raise awareness in the medical profession so people are more aware of liver problems, testing for disease early, and getting people referred so that we can stop the damage before it's reached the end.
Okay, so if I went to the doctor tomorrow and got this test, I mean, obviously the worst thing that could happen was that I got the result back and I got some kind of analysis along the lines of what Dave got here, which, look, you toast and get your liver transplant. Hopefully it wouldn't be that, but there must be some scale between saying, no, you're fine, and, oh, you've had it. So what would that be? Might they say, look, you need to cut down, or you need to stop, or limit yourself to drinking a certain type of alcohol? What could there be? Because a lot of people who do drink will be frightened to go for being told that they're not allowed to drink anymore.
Absolutely. It's a common sense approach. If your liver is in trouble, the first thing your doctor should be doing is testing to find out exactly what's causing it. We've been focusing a lot on alcohol tonight, which is very appropriate, but there are other causes, viral hepatitis, obesity-related disease, and some very rare conditions. So the first thing is to get a proper diagnosis. If, for example, you have viral hepatitis, then there are drugs we can use to control it, to cure it. If you have alcohol-related liver disease, your doctor can look at how much damage has been done to the liver, and we can then get a sensible programme. And that sensible programme in advanced stages may well be stopping alcohol completely, but if we catch things early, we can start a harm reduction programme. There are lots of things we can do if we catch people early. And the message really is get in there early, and we won't see problems towards the end.
Do you take a drink, Professor Foster, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm very happy to admit that I'm very happy to have a bottle of wine over weekends, but the important thing is to drink...
When do you start measuring the weekend? Is that from Friday at 6 o'clock till late Sunday night, or is it all in one go on a Saturday?
No, I have a nice half bottle of wine with my wife from Friday, Saturday evening. We tend to lay off on Sunday, and a couple of days drinking every week is not going to lead to undue harm.
But that's the limit of it, and you wouldn't recommend going much beyond that?
I think it's very important that everyone who drinks alcohol has 2 or 3 days a week where they don't drink anything at all. And provided you can have 2 or 3 clear days and not require alcohol, the danger is when you're waking up in the morning thinking, I could do with a drink. That's a very bad sign.
Well,
Okay.
you're an alcoholic then, aren't you?
Well,
You're
yes.
on the road.
Well, you are. I mean,
Yeah.
plainly that's a bad sign. I mean,
Yeah.
your liver may be the last of your problems if you
Yeah.
want to drink first thing in the morning.
Very easy to get into that position, of course. Very easy
Yeah.
to start with a few parties. The weekend drifts a little bit into Monday, Tuesday, and then there's a party on Wednesday. And before you know where you are, you're having alcohol every day, and then it's lunchtime. It's very easy to drift.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Professor Graham Foster. Just, Dave, can I ask you, were you at that stage? Were you wanting a drink on a Monday morning?
No. But
They said that's the worry with you. You're a perfectly normal kind of heavy drinker.
What it is, but then again, you got to dinner time, you think, I'm going to the pub.
Lunchtime.
Lunchtime, down to the pub. When I'd finished in the cops, it was basically, it's what I brushed me back. And unfortunately, when I look back, what I was doing, it was using it as a crutch. So every dinner time, every night. And of course, it just takes its toll. If I can come back to that very story about my dad, 75, they told him to stop drinking. He did for 6 months, came back and his liver was absolutely fine.
Right, okay.
Which
So
I think is a great
you can stop
point.
completely. And then
He stopped completely for 6 months and
Then
he
be a
came
lot
back.
more moderate,
I should have
yeah.
asked the professor that, whether you can actually stopping can help you
Oh
regenerate.
yeah, it's the only organ in your body that can regenerate itself.
Right. Okay. Oh, all right. The prof's still there. Excellent, Professor Foster. So, if I, for example, I've stopped drinking for Lent. This is day 21. Thanks for asking. Just the what is it now? It'd be 25 to go. So, what will my liver have regenerated in that time?
It will indeed. Livers are dramatically good at fixing themselves. So a good surgeon could take probably 3/4 of your liver away and you'd come through it fine. So you can do an awful lot of damage to your liver without being aware of it. And that, of course, is where Dave ran into trouble, because most of his liver was destroyed and he was perfectly healthy. It's when that last little drop goes, then everything falls apart. But if you stop drinking, we can take patients who are in very advanced stages of liver disease, patients approaching a transplant, stop drinking, the liver will reverse and go back to a very healthy situation. Now, that's not to say I'm advocating having a large period of alcohol, then abstaining for 6 months and going back to it.
No.
A bit of common sense.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Graham Foster. I must say, I was just looking for his mobile number here. I'm going to make a note of it, just in case I need to get in touch. But and you, Dave, for that matter. But thanks very much indeed. That's,
You're welcome, thank you.
That's really, really fascinating. It is 6 minutes to 7 now.
This is 5 Live Drive.
Let's have a look at the headlines. Malaysia Airlines has defended the support it's offered to the relatives of those on board the missing plane. A further 7.5% of the Lloyds banking group is being sold off by the government. And David Cameron's welcoming the latest fall in inflation down to its lowest level for 4 years. Let's have the travel, Amy.
Thanks, Adrian. The M60 anti-clockwise still really slow. Of course, the football traffic now affecting it as well after that accident earlier on. It's queuing from a roundabout junction, the junction with the M61 back to junction 13 at Worsley. So we've got heavy traffic all around the Eccles interchange, and it's having a knock-on effect on the M62 and the M61 as well. M25 clockwise, there was a broken down vehicle. It's gone, but it's still slow from the QE2 bridge to junction 30 at Lakeside. M56 heading out of Manchester. Emergency repairs will affect you at junction 8, and the M6 southbound is a broken down lorry blocking a lane between 15 and 14. Amy Clues, 5 Live Travel.
1994, the year it all began for 5 Live. For 2 decades now, we brought you the biggest stories, breaking news and the best live sport.
Peter Allen.
On Friday, to mark the station's birthday, we'll chart its major milestones in an hour-long special.
We wondered whether you'd like to use text messaging to have your say in what happens on this programme.
Oh no! We'll also hear how 5 Live has changed the lives of some of our listeners. And I'll attempt to present nearly every show on this station. And tomorrow, I'll be in Sheila Fogarty's seat.
5 Live at 20.
A week of celebrations continue tomorrow.
On BBC Radio 5 Live.
Did you hear that? First time Julian said perhaps listeners could text message us.
I've heard great things about that programme, actually. It's a work of art. Apparently somebody has spent probably the last 10 years going through 20 years worth of clips. It sounds brilliant.
Yeah. Right, there is some bad news.
This is good. This is an amazing story. We should have led with this, really.
Because there is a national shortage of fences.
What kind of fences, Victoria? Wooden ones, stone ones?
Wooden ones.
Wooden fences.
And it's to do with the bad weather over the winter, and it's thought to be one of the reasons. And DIY stores say that demand has gone up fivefold. There have even been reports of thefts of wooden fence panels.
What? No, it's serious. It just seems. I never thought. Where do fences come
So
from?
stop making me laugh. Anyway, let's talk to Simone Gallen, who is the editor
of Fencing and Landscaping News magazine. Simone, we're not laughing at your job title, I promise you. We just both been unable to get our fencing heads on tonight for this story. So, have you noticed a problem, Simone? You must get free fences as editor of the magazine. Have any of them gone missing?
Oh, I did get a free fence, but I'm not going to tell you why. But no, on a sort of like semi-serious note, it's a trade magazine, and we've done a lot of research regarding the fence panel shortage, and it's due to bad weather before Christmas and due to the building trade increasing. Houses being built.
Okay, so where do fence panels originate? Who grows the trees to make the wood for a fence panel?
Well, it's twofold. There's homegrown timber, which obviously we support, and it's the sawmills who manufacture them, and then import and export.
Right, okay. So how is this going to get resolved? I mean, we've got to cut more of our trees down or just source some more from abroad?
Both, really. There has been a log shortage in the UK due to bad weather pulling them out, and also they're used a lot for biomass now. And even a shortage in Europe, so it's just twofolds basically. But it will get sorted out. It's just that January and February have been absolutely lovely weather, and the contractor is able to go out and get the fences done for those who have had the fences blown over.
So, but if you're going out fence shopping, then presumably this isn't a great time to do it. You should wait for supplies to replenish, because presumably fence prices are rising exponentially if there's a shortage.
Yeah, there's been an increase between 20% and 30%. So the reports in the papers have been £80 per panel. Well, that's that's not happening. No one is going to pay £80 per panel. But your domestic people will probably go to the local DIY, or your massive retail. Your trade people source from there's about 150 sawmills throughout the UK and Scotland.
Where do you buy Fencing and Landscaping News, by the way? Is it generally available?
Newsagents.
No, it's not newsagents. It's a trade magazine,
right,
and it goes out to 10,000.
Okay.
The readership is about 25,000.
All right.
So,
Simone, nice talking to you. Thank you very much.
I was not much help in that interview. I apologise. Right, that is it from us. You can listen again to the interview earlier with the mum who is taking her 3-year-old daughter on a round-the-world sailing trip. It's up on the 5 Live website. Lots of texters were saying to her, absolutely go for it. And here tomorrow, Tony Livesey and Sam Walker. Thank you, Adrian Chiles.
Thank you very
that
much
was
indeed.
fun.
You're very welcome.
See you soon.
Coming up on 5 Live.
The Manchester derby as United strive for pride. City to reel in both Chelsea and Liverpool. Arsenal face Swansea after their Chelsea humiliation. And in the Championship, we're following the leaders Leicester and managerless Nottingham Forest as well. All that to come in 5 Live Sports.
First for breaking news and the best live sport. This is BBC 5 Live.
It's 7 o'clock on 5 Live. This is Mark Pugach on 5 Live Sports Extra from 7:30. Arsenal host Swansea in the Premier League. Here on 5 Live, the Manchester derby. And on the 5 Live website, you can hear Alan McGee, the man who discovered Oasis, explain how he will help Bears of the Happy Mondays become an MP.
This is BBC 5 Live.
First, the news with Jill Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. The head of Malaysia Airlines has defended the support offered by his company to the families whose relatives were on board flight MH370. There were clashes between relatives and police outside the Malaysian embassy in Beijing. Many people feel angry and frustrated and are demanding concrete evidence about the plane's fate. Marta Kochanovska-Hodder lost her father in a plane crash in Russia in 2010.
It's a very, very long haul for them, especially with all that they have to face, with waiting to find any debris. Whether there will be any potential of finding any bodies is obviously highly questionable in that case. I just feel incredible sympathy for them because it's a very, very long journey ahead of them.
Candlelit vigils being held in Malaysia for the missing passengers and crew. The disgraced former chairman of the Co-op Bank, Paul Flowers, says both he and the bank failed in their duty to customers. He was forced to resign last year, shortly after being accused of buying cocaine. In his first interview since the scandal, Mr Flowers also told Newsnight government ministers were behind some of the bank's problems. The government's selling off 7.5% of the partly nationalised Lloyds banking group. It's part of plans to fully return the bank to the private sector. Police in West Yorkshire say inquiries are continuing after a woman apparently killed herself in a supermarket. Officers sealed off Asda and Shipley after the incident this morning. It's now reopened. Our reporter Rowan Bridge is outside the store.
Asda have released a short statement. They said that they are aware of an incident at the Shipley store. They say their thoughts are with the family of the woman involved, and they say their priority now is helping staff at the store and also assisting police with their inquiries.
The annual rate of inflation has fallen to 1.7%, its lowest figure in more than 4 years. Cheaper petrol and diesel and lower household energy bills were all contributing factors. And a committee of MPs has voted to give the government the power to decriminalise non-payment of the TV licence fee. There'll have to be a review to look at how civil penalties would work before that could happen.
First for breaking news, this is 5 Live. Dramatic scenes in Crimea. Russian troops forced their way into a large military airbase.
Colonel Yuli Mamcha, who has emerged as a national hero in many ways of the Ukrainian resistance. First of all, he met with Russians and refused to hand over his base again. Then, bizarrely, he conducted a wedding of 2 lieutenants, a man and a woman on the base. Even as they conducted it, you could see snipers moving into position.
First for breaking news, this is 5 Live.
And here on 5 Live this evening, loyalties divided across Manchester as the red half meets the blue. It's Manchester United against Manchester City here on 5 Live Sport.
Lee Sutton's making something out of nothing. Turns the ball across the area. Dennis Law has scored for Manchester City. Back heels the ball into the back of United's net.
This could be a record win if United score a 5th goal. Kanchelskis from Cantona. He slides with the ball. It's saved and only parried. Kanchelskis follows it up to score his hat-trick. Keane is involved in a challenge with Haaland. Oh, it's red. It's red. He says something to Haaland. I'm not sure whether it was sorry. I rather suspect it wasn't.
Gotas in, level with the penalty spot, shoots past Bartes, it's 3-1 to Manchester City, and are they going to win the last ever league derby here at Main Road?
Martin Atkinson still doesn't blow the final whistle. Ryan Giggs into Owen, Owen Venture wins the game! Michael Owen scores for Manchester United, deep into added time.
Milner trying to find Silver, it comes from Balotelli, that's a brilliant finish. He's passed the ball into the goal. Oh, there's a message for everyone. Why always me?
Nani, the ball into the area, deflected. Rudio! Fantastic! Wonderful goal! One of the goals of the season! Overhead kick! Thrilling! Could be the winner! Wayne Rooney salutes the crowd!
Great run by Navas. He's quick, he's into the penalty. There's the cross team, and it's into the net by Nasri, and it's 4-0. And this is now an embarrassment for Manchester United.
Well, good evening from Mark Pugac and the team on 5 Live Sport. We're at Old Trafford for the 167th Manchester derby. It's league meeting number 150 between these two, and Manchester City have won on their last 2 visits here. But David Moyes says, an admission in the programme notes, this season we've struggled to sustain our best form, but that is exactly what I want us to do between now and the end of the campaign. And he goes on to say, tonight we have every right to approach this game against City with confidence based on our last 2 performances. And with our history, we know that on our day we can beat any team at all. Alan Green's with us, former England international Chris Waddle, and our chief football correspondent Mike Ingham. Mike, I'm struck by the fact that David Moyes, if you like, has to talk about the last two performances to give them confidence. That's a sign of the times in itself.
Yes, sort of clutching at straws a bit, Mark, I think, but both of the sides tonight from the weekend have made 4 changes. I'll give you David Moyes' selection first of all for Manchester United. Out go Butner, Fletcher, Young and Kagawa. In come Evra, Cleverley, Welbeck and Ferdinand. So the team is De Gea in goal. The back four is Raphael, Ferdinand, Jones and Evra. Then 3 in the middle, Carrick, Cleverley and Fellaini, and Mata behind Rooney and Welbeck, although maybe Mata will play on the right-hand side. The Manchester City changes. Out go Kolarov, Lescott, Milner and Negredo. In come Clichy, company of course, Navas and Dzeko. And the City lineup, Hart in goal. The back four, Zabaleta, company, Di Michelis and Clichy. Fernandinho and Yaya Toure. Then Navas, Silva, Nasri and Dzeko.
Chris, I was interested that Mike said he just wonders where Mata's going to play, because I was thinking that Van Persie's injury might have made it a little bit easier for David Moyes. Where was he going to play Mata? Because he just play him where he wants to play him, in the hole, where
well, he should play him
where Rooney and Van Persie have been playing. He's been shunted out to the right.
Where you spend all that money for. I think he should be playing there, but listen, I think if you're playing somebody else rather than one of the big 4 or 5 at the minute, then I think he would be playing in that. I think Saturday he would play there. But Manchester City obviously has shown a lot of respect to them, rightly so. They're a top team. And he's thinking, I'm not going to do what I did against Liverpool, where he played 2 in the middle of the park and got absolutely hammered. So he's gone, obviously, a tight 3. And he'll say to Mata, look, when we get the ball, you're allowed to wander around a bit, but try and balance off on that right-hand side, and same with Danny Welbeck on the left.
Now, for Manchester City, no more distractions, Chris. No FA Cup, no Champions League. Games in hand, catch up to play. Jose's mind games. Now we'll see, won't we? Now we'll see Manchester City, what they're made of.
Yeah, they've got tough games coming up tonight, and then Arsenal away on the weekend. So these are big games, but City players, the big players, they've played in a lot of big games, so they know what expected of them. The thing now is they've got a similar run into Liverpool, as they just take Premier League game as it comes, week by week. So it'll get them pressure. They've got a very good squad. You'd expect them to kick on. And really, I said at the start of the season, I thought City would win it, and I've got to stick by that. But it's going to be very close and very tight. And this is a big game. Saturday's a big game, and obviously going to Anfield's a massive game in a few weeks' time, isn't it? So they're the 3 big ones, but I still think City will be there now at the end of it. They're such a strong squad.
And Mike, every time we think that Manchester United were finding a little bit of form, they go and have a hiccup, don't they? I mean, I was thinking about over sort of Christmas time, we're thinking, they're getting to a little bit of a stride, and they have the Swansea defeat at home in the FA Cup, don't they? And then suddenly they all fall down again.
Well, because that all it does, Mark, really is paper over cracks. And I think it's probably good for the long term for Manchester United that these cracks are being exposed in the way that they are. I mean, when you look at the 2 teams tonight, and it seems to me, what a role reversal we've got going on at the moment in the Premier League. Because in particular tonight, if you think about it, Liverpool fans will have a vested interest in Manchester United winning tonight. That can't happen too many times, of course. But if you just look at the double whammy, it seems to me, to Manchester United, is not only are they without a Fernandinho or Yaya Toure in front of the back four, the back four probably needs, well, in my opinion, completely replacing. Certainly 3 of the back 4 do. So there's major surgery that has to take place for United.
You're absolutely right, Mike. 2 Liverpool fans have said to me today, I can't believe what I'm about to say. Come on, Man United. But it's true, isn't it, Chris? You know, Liverpool will want Manchester United to win. Chelsea, likewise, want Manchester United to win.
Listen, football's a fickle business, and you would never have thought that at the start of the season you would be asking Liverpool fans would be asking Manchester United to win tonight, but that's the way football works. The only problem they've got, I'm looking at the team, and I think he's done the right idea packing the midfield, Manchester United, as they come running out for the ball. Just creativity, though. There's nobody in the middle of the park for me who's going to give the ball to Matt. I give the ball to Rooney, give him the service. Michael Carrick's a very good passer, but he likes to pass it very sensible. He's conservative on his pass. He likes to give it very easy. He's not going to split teams with passing. And that 3 in the midfield, that is the problem. Who's going to give these 3 attacking players the ball in the right places?
We'll talk more about the sort of tactics and what might happen in midfield a little bit later on. United's record against the top teams this season is awful, really. They've beaten only one of the sides in the top 9 this season. They beat Arsenal here 1-0 in November. But ahead of the game, David Moyes has received the support of the United legend, Sir Bobby Charlton.
We've had a bit of criticism leading up to this, and but I never doubt Manchester United. And we have a new manager, and there's been all sorts of controversies about the fact that he's come from Liverpool, the city, to Manchester, and he hasn't really done the best that he possibly can. And I'm absolutely certain, you know, that we picked the right man.
So Bobby Charlton talking about David Moyes. Alan Green, when we were here this time last week, we were actually talking about that banner up there, the chosen one, with David Moyes. There was some suggestion it was going to be taken down at the request of United fans. The last week, all we can say is has bought him a little bit of time, David Moyes.
Yeah, a little bit. I think the quality of the victory over Olympiacos was somewhat exaggerated. It was too easily forgotten. I felt that you know, they were a mediocre team in terms of the last 16 of a Champions League. And I did say before the game, Mark, last week, I fully expected Manchester United to win and to go through. So it was par for the course, without being a particularly spectacular performance. Now, I think winning at West Ham on Saturday, I think there was more promise from that game. And, of course, they take, you know, hope from the fact that they have 2 clean sheets. But you're right, it's about 2 games. Yeah. When did we talk about Manchester United like that in the past? Oh, we feel better after these 2 games. Well, sorry.
Never in the history of Five Live, that's for sure.
Not in the history of my commentating in Five Live, that's for sure. And I think tonight, I would expect Manchester City to win. I really would expect them to win, as they expect to win, because frankly, they're a much better team than the current Manchester United side. However, maybe the little bit of spark that they took from the last 2 performances might take them into a draw.
Chris, Jose Mourinho is not for the first time trying it on, isn't he? As a player, you'd much rather have the points in the bank, wouldn't you, than the games in hand?
I know people say, listen, if it's 1 game, Mark, yeah, you can say, well, we've got this game and now we'll look at the fixtures and you think, yeah, and get that, we'll win that one. But when you're talking 3 games, it was, wasn't it? And it's a win-win-win. It's not as easy as people think, especially in the Premier League. So, listen, if you're sitting top, you say, come and catch me. You know, you should go play more games. It's hard on your legs. It's, you know, you're playing Saturday, Tuesday, or whatever it is. It's a lot harder. Listen, Jose Mourinho is very good at what he does. He says the right things. And I think a lot of people now just let it go in one ear and out the other because he's been saying it for years. And listen, he knows what he's saying. And he's just trying to stir and put pressure away from himself. When I heard him say, this is a good preparation, if we finish 2nd or 3rd, it's great for us because we're building. Listen, they should, if they don't, why can't they win it? The squad he's got.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why he's beat also, Chris, is the fact that he wants a striker. Yeah. And if he wins the title without that striker, he might find that, you know, Roman Abramovich is saying to him in the summertime, well, you know, you're okay, you won the league, why do you need reinforcements? So I think that's part of the thinking. I also think he's, by the way, so far for me, he's conducted one of the best bits of business all season. Mata out and Matic in, because the Matic role at Chelsea now, it seems to me, is one of the most important roles in any team, and he's colossal there.
He's an exceptional coach, but I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. Yeah. Never. And, you know, I hear a story from last weekend at Stamford Bridge when questioned after the game about why he disappeared down the tunnel before the end of the